Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Roundup series. This is the Toronto Fringe 2026 Roundup Part 3. This is the final episode of our 3-episode installment for the 2026 Fringe season. The three of us are very excited to dive into discussing the last shows that we got the opportunity to see. And of course, it's episode 3, and the three of us are all hanging out and here to chat about it. I'm Jillian. I am the associate artistic producer. I've got my hydration station, some acai berry hydration stick happening in my mason jar today. I've been spinning a lot post-Fringe, so I gotta keep my hydration up. I'm joined by my two co-artistic producers. We've got Ryan Borochovitz and Mackenzie Horner. Ryan, bonjour. We'll start with you. Hello, bonjour. Ryan, how are you doing? What are you sipping on?
Hello, I'm doing okay. Yeah, I have Taylor's Yorkshire tea, #not yet sponsored, in my
We'll get there.
Cup.
All right, and Mackenzie, how about you? How are you doing, friend?
Well, I'm doing great. And, I was painting my condo this week, got paint on my forehead, and then I scratched myself while trying to get the latex paint off. So great times there. I now look like I don't know what I have going on my face. Anyway, point being is I'm drinking from the Cup, and I'm drinking a new beverage I found at the Metro, which is a Dr. Pepper Blackberry Zero Sugar.
Oh my gosh, I need to get my hands on that. Whoa.
I know. The case was right at the door, and I walked in, and I was like, Mac is getting this.
Yes. Also, I will say, Mac, your scrape kind of matches your shirt, so I feel like your ensemble is hitting right now.
There you go, Jill. I love that. Good note.
So today is going to be so much fun. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the last shows that we need to discuss from the Toronto 2026 Fringe. So you're going to be hearing a lot from Mr. Mackenzie Horner today.
Buckle up, people. It's a Mac episode.
Big Mac episode.
Big Mac. And a sprinkling of Ryan and myself as per usual too, but I will host us along. We've done our What Is in Our Cup. Let's dive in, folks. Are we ready?
Yes.
We are ready when you are. Let's finish this.
Okay, so the first show we're going to chat about, is called Gray Spaces. And this was a Bowtie Productions and MC Productions production. And Ryan and Mackenzie both saw this one. So one of you want to give us a little synopsis and discuss it?
So, Mac, I'll toss it to you because I saw this on the first day of Fringe, and it's now several weeks later when we're recording this. So why don't you take the lead on the
I saw it on the last day of Fringe.
So you're better equipped for this.
Yes. Yeah. So, Gray Spaces, it's kind of like a dark, twisted version of The Good Place. Also like a darker version of Iris Says Goodbye, from last year's Fringe. Where basically the whole premise is you have 3 characters in this piece. We meet 2 characters on a TTC subway. That is Rowan, who is the man, and then there's Aisha, who's the woman. And they have this really meet cute moment on the subway. He doesn't get her number. He has this kind of big, Maria song, basically, where he's singing about how great it is to be found the woman he loves. And he's going to try and go get her number. All of a sudden, he is dead. We don't know how or why he dies that time. He just dies. But he ends up in, the gray space, which is, the space where either you basically, you sign off on your life story, and then if you sign off, you get to go through to the other side, beyond the other door, or you can go back down to Earth, and your memories are wiped, but then you can kind of redo your life, because you'll have, deja vu-y, hints of what could be. So think, I think it's season 3 of The Good Place, where they all get sent back down to Earth to relive their life after Michael saves them from their first deaths they had. Anyway, point being is, he gets sent back down, and then as the story goes on, he keeps trying to live this perfect life. And by doing that, he keeps creating all these ripples effects in time where, and at first you think it's funny because every time something goes wrong, he chooses to kill himself. But he does it all.
So funny.
Well, it's funny because in the sense, he shows up the first time and it's he has a bottle of pills. Next time he has a rope for a noose. Next time he has a toaster. So
quite
it just
dark.
keeps getting, it's dark comedy, but it just keeps getting more and more outlandish in how he's choosing just to willingly off himself. The admin person named Admin is dude, you're creating too many ripples in time here, and it's gonna cause problems. You can't keep doing this. And he's no, I'm gonna create the perfect life for myself. And eventually, somehow Admin ends up being in his world too on the subway as a new love interest. Because turns out they had a good thing in their lives where they cross paths potentially. It ends up with Rowan, and the words of the Dark Knight, he lives long enough to see himself become the villain of the story, where he traumatizes both Admin and Aisha, and ultimately he ends up stuck in purgatory, basically becoming the new Admin, as because Admin leaves him behind, basically says you can't leave, and she rips up his life contract so he can no longer go back to Earth to rewrite it. It's a very dark story. The music was great. This was done by Bowtie Productions and MC Productions, so they are the people who did Next to Normal earlier this year that Jill and I saw.
And Tick Tick Boom before that, and many other productions that we haven't reviewed before that.
Correct, yes. So they're great. And so, but this is an original musical. So for me, I really enjoyed the story because it started off as something cute and then became very dark and sinister. There is one point where, trigger warning for audiences, Rowan is sent up to visit Aisha because at that point he's living with Admin or Min, who he's not engaged yet, but she keeps wanting to get engaged to. So he goes up, he runs into Aisha, he's having these brain conflicts. He ends up picking up her baby and jumps off the balcony with the baby. There was an audible gasp in the audience when this moment happened. And any show that can get the entire audience to react to a moment, and you could feel the whole audience turn on him as this scene is escalating, as he's getting closer and closer to the edge of the balcony. And he keeps saying, don't worry, this is just a blip. Like, I'll find you again, Aisha. We'll do this again, and I'll get it right this time. And like you can see both the women like getting really genuinely panicked, even though we know there's no baby on the stage. It's like just a doll in a blanket. But the point being is the three of them worked so well together. We had I'll get all their names.
Yeah, I have the cast list here. So it's Justin Myers Chapman, who Mac, you might remember as Sloane, the host from Killing Time.
Yes.
And Justin was also in Iris last year, so appropriate that we've noticed some similarities here. Justan's playing Rowan. We have Taryn Wachenko, who plays Min, and Michelle Chu, who plays Aisha. Also, the book is by Brittany Miranda, music by Finn Cuthbert, and both of them co-wrote the lyrics. Sapphire Dimitro is the director.
I will say, this show proved to me that Theatre Pass Murray can do text sound well for a musical. After Sinners, where I came away going, and I appreciate the fact that Marla from Sinners even commented going, hey, thanks so much for the great review in part one. And yes, we were struggling with our sound throughout. But that has been an ongoing thing with Theatre Pass Murray and past Fringes where they haven't quite gotten the sound nailed. This time, and in another show we'll talk about in this episode, that was also Theatre Pass Murray, they did get the sound right, and it makes a ton of difference so you can actually understand what is being sung on stage. Fringe just needs to give more time to the musicals so they can properly tech their sound, because sound is such a key thing for any musical that is done at the Fringe, and they deserve to have their tech given the proper time and attention so that they can actually sound the best they can. But Ryan, I know you were a little bit more mixed on this show.
Yeah. So I liked it a lot. I think it's really good. It's definitely within my top 5 of things I saw at Fringe. I just kind of left it thinking, I don't know. There was a lot of like weird stuff about it. I think it's like so tightly constructed that kind of, this is interesting to me. It's like, because it's so well composed and well created like clockwork, the things that I take issue with in it, I feel like, well, I don't know how you would change that. I think it's kind of too tight to be repairable. A big part for me is that the whole final third of it is when Min enters the real world, and then that whole ripple relationship. And I couldn't quite wrap my head around like, okay, well, what is this doing for the story? How is it sort of relating to what we've been watching so far? We have sort of this perfectly acceptable parable about how you can't make everything perfect. You can't get it all right. And then, I don't know, to me, like that threw it in a different direction that I'm not saying they should get rid of altogether, but I don't really know. I couldn't quite put my finger on what was bothering me about it, other than just like, this feels like a big left turn. And I think,
I will agree. I will agree. When Minnie came down and became the other love interest of the story, I was thrown for a minute because I was like, what is going on here? Like, she seemed kind of like a Janet character from The Good Place, where you don't expect to see her come down and become a love interest, even though
Janet has the best love story in the entire show.
I know she does. I know, but that's in the afterlife, not so much in real life. Anyway, point being is, I do agree. When Minnie came down and became a love interest, I was like, I'm a little confused about how we got here, because I didn't think she was allowed to come down.
And I
know they tried to explain it, where it's like, oh, we must have crossed paths, because time is not linear in the afterlife.
It's a Jeremy Bearimy.
Where basically, like, they could have crossed paths anywhere, anytime, and she could logistically be in his time.
Like, the thing, I'm less bothered by the mechanics of how did she get here. I'm more bothered by, like, why does she want to be here? Why is she doing this? Because I don't really feel like she and Rowan liked each other very much.
I feel they needed a song earlier on that showed there was an inkling of interest. I also will say I think they need a stronger opening number. The opening number of Aisha on the train having a meltdown about her portfolio, I was like, what is this opening number? I'm not getting the vibe of what's going on. Like the duet they have right afterwards is lovely. But I will say, I think they need a bit more of a stronger opening number just to really kick the show off on a higher note. Like maybe have Min be the opening number and have her talking about life and just like the gray space.
I kind of
I don't know if you want to start there.
I wouldn't start there. I do like your idea of having Min start the show, but maybe not in a way that reveals who or what she or where she is.
Yeah, maybe her saying about like wanting love.
Yeah, make her seem like some sort of like narrator figure who you don't know what her role is.
Office, she can't really, find love. And
then we see this meet cute of the unrelated characters, and then one of them dies, and now we find out who this narrator is. Something like that. Exactly. I don't know. I don't want to like script off.
Feel free to take our notes, team. Feel free to take our notes.
But yeah, like
this is a show I want to see reprogrammed at other theaters. These are shows that deserve the new life. Like, this is a strong enough piece that I think you could take it to any other theater company, maybe do a bit more tweaking on the book, here or there. But I think really you could do this piece. Like, this piece is strong enough now that you could easily reprogram it. It doesn't need more workshopping, really. It just needs minor
I think it could use some more workshopping. But that's fair. But like, I will say, like, the cast is so strong in this. Oh, God, and it's like Justin is, we know this, Justin is a star, such like, exuberant charisma. The I found the love of my life song right before dying was like really just like so sweet. Like, it sold me on this is a very good rom-com. And I'll be honest, I knew I wanted to see this show, just like, Bowtie has a show in Fringe, and it's their first original musical, a company that to this point has only done revivals. So I was like, yes, I'll see whatever this is. So I actually went into it having not read the description of what this show is. So I had like no idea that we were dealing with anything metaphysical. So I'm like, this is just like a cute rom-com, characters meeting on the train, and then like, okay, this is what we're doing. And it just stands sold that journey.
I mean, I will say, like, I love the fact that we turned from a rom-com into something darker. Like, the moment I knew we were going to go somewhere darker is during the dating and death montage, where you see them having a genuine connection, Aisha and Rowan, and then he spills the coffee on her.
And then, it's ruined. Time to kill myself.
Exactly. It's like, no. Like, you're actually doing really well, dude. Like, you're actually winning the day with her. Like, you're wooing her. Like, she's okay. But he gives it up, and once again, the lady next to me in the audience went, damn it.
Jesus Christ.
The old lady kind of said that. And I was like, okay, so clearly the show is working because everybody's feeling this vibe of you're on the wrong path now, dude. Like you're getting hung up.
Yeah, I will say, like, to me, you mentioned a few sort of like possible like influences on this. I think the most obvious one to me is Groundhog Day, because especially like in that sequence, like it's, and what's sort of unique, I don't think you kind of clarified this in the description, but correct me if I'm wrong, but the point is that when you are given the option of the two doors, you sign the thing to say, like, I'm okay with the life I lived. And if you're not okay with it, you go through the other door and try again. But most people have no memory when they go through that door.
He breaks that rule. So there's a glitch in the system where he can remember.
Yeah, so most people, it's like, you could try again, but what are you going to do differently? You don't have memory of what went wrong.
You have deja vu. You have moments where she says, where she says you won't remember it exactly, but there will be moments where, because even Aisha keeps saying, haven't I met you before? Because she's getting the ripples as well, where basically it's deja vuing. But like,
she hasn't
died. She hasn't died, but she's getting ripple elements of the regenerations.
I think some of this mechanics could be clarified, because I feel like we're remembering it differently. Like I remembered it like there's no deja vu. It's like, good luck trying to do better when you have no memory of what went wrong. But then the catalyst for the entire plot is that Rowan does remember. He's some sort of exception thematically. I think
basically he breaks the rules, or he kills down so many times that the system can't.
I don't think that was it. Like, I think he.
This needs to be clarified. There needs to be a moment in the book where this gets clarified. I don't know, Jill, are like you sold on this show? Would you go see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's lovely that you both have sort of like different approaches to how you're. I think it's kind of rare sometimes in a musical to get that difference, like of a different feeling walking away. So I hear you. Probably yes, like revisiting it and clarifying might help, but both of what you're saying, I mean, I didn't get a chance to see the show, unfortunately, but makes sense thematically. So that's kind of a cool takeaway.
Also say before we move on, we mentioned Justin is really good. Taryn Wachenko and Michelle Chu as the two competing ladies in this love triangle were both like excellent. Taryn's voice is so interesting. Like it's kind of like I don't know. I can't recall if I've ever seen this performer before, but like almost like Minnie Mouse-esque. I don't know if that's like a reasonable.
Well, I think the best way I could describe it is it's a very. And the same with Kristen Chenoweth sings. She's singing more up in the mask, like versus down in the chest. But then when she does sing into the chest, she's flipping character almost. Basically, like she does the Minnie Mouse, Kristen Chenoweth style singing when she's trying to be happy, perky, dutiful girlfriend who's waiting to get engaged. But then when she's at Min, like in the gray space, it does sit lower. Like
that's really lovely.
She actually is playing with her voice placement to tell the audience what is going on in her character, whether it's facade or real Min. As I watched, because at first I did clock her and her voice changed a bit. And I was like, what's going on? Then I sat back in my chair as I'm watching the relationship montage of her and Rowan living their life together. And, it starts off with, hey, honey, welcome home. I made the dishes. And as that wanes, her voice changes back into that lower, more chesty voice.
Before we move on, let's shout out the band because you complimented the sound on this. The band is great. So we have cello by Isaac Cuck and Michelle Zhao. Then we have violin by Gemma Dawn and keys by Finn Cuthbert, who is the composer and also the music director. So is there a sound designer credited too? Because orchestration is by Ethan Rottenberg. And
Ethan!
I don't see a sound designer. But whatever they
shout
did,
out to whoever they had.
they did a great job, and kudos to the band for not overpowering the singers as is so
Fringe,
commonly
hire that person to do all the Theater Pass Mirage shows that are musicals.
Okay,
great. So picking it up, like Max said, a lot of these shows getting an afterlife after the Fringe would be stunning. So it sounds like Gray Spaces definitely deserves this afterlife.
It was my number one.
We will see them.
Yeah, yes. Well, number one, number two. Camp and Gray Spaces go back and forth in my brain. It's like
they're so different. How do you compare them?
Perfect.
They're an apple and an orange, yeah.
But we are moving on to our next show, and this will be a show that Mackenzie and I will chat about. Will and the Amazingly Obsessive Theatrical Vinyl Collection. And it is Vinyl Collection Productions. And Mac, I would love to give the synopsis of this because Will Perry is a great friend of mine.
We love Will. He's lovely.
It didn't have two shows in the Fringe this year.
He did. So Will had two shows, a show that was in Kids Fest, and then this show that was very much in the regular Fringe lineup. So this show was phenomenal from my end, and I think mostly because I know Will, or I know Will in a certain light. I'm gonna give the synopsis, but also give a little bit of a spoiler alert because it does pivot.
I think we're spoiling everything here.
I mean, I do know though that Will is really, really gunning for afterlife for this piece, so I just want to set folks up for this is the premise, and then if you don't want to listen and you want to preserve for an in-person vinyl collection perusal, then there we go. So this is a one-person show, written, performed, produced by Will. Will is a phenomenal social media influencer as well. So both Will's shows had a lot of media happening in the background. And this show opens with him doing a sort of musical theater montage with
what that's an homage to, Jill?
Yeah.
It's Joseph, but it also is the recent revival of Sunset Boulevard, where the opening of Act 2, where the character ends up walking outside the theater and into the theater as he's singing the titular opening Act 2 number. So he knows his musicals really well.
A clever bookmark, yes. And you get this right off the cuff. But essentially, this is a one-person show where it is Will Perry, as Will himself, inviting the audience into his living room, and he's donning gold silk pajamas, and it's like a little slumber party. And Will always says this of hey, besties, and that's exactly in the script. All the audience members become his besties, and there's a milk crate full of vinyls, and we learn really quickly Will is a musical theater aficionado. Really early on explains how musical theater has sort of helped him in many domains of his life, become a musical theater performer, helped him him come out as a queer individual and helped him through other times of his life. And so essentially what the show is him utilizing a musical theater vinyl as a starting place to a story that he's going to tell. So whether it was a role that he played or whether this was pivotal for a moment in his life. So it was very like autobiographical sort of reflection. And like Max said, using super clever sort of mixing multiple musicals at the same time. And that was cool too, being a musical theater artist. And Mac, you'll probably back me up, but seeing certain musicals partner together was super lovely. And this is where, if you don't want to spoil, I will say it and trigger warning, but halfway through, Will starts using this journey to open up even further about how he had a fair relationship with a faculty member during his time at theater school, and how that instructor sort of conquered, like owned Will in a way. It really sort of...
It was abusive.
Yes.
Abusive power relationship.
That Will is still sort of wading their way through. And that's something that I actually personally didn't know about Will. So I was bearing witness to that side of them for the first time. It was a super, lovely is the wrong word, but a lovely hair turn where we were in it. We were besties. We were following Will's journey. And then this was just a place for Will to start to open up about this. And we were also alongside that journey. So it was quite emotional for many reasons. I'm watching this from a personal level and from like a brilliant artistic switch level. Overall, that's sort of the synopsis, is sort of a reflection using musical theater as the crux to reflect on different assets of life. I enjoyed it. I do think there's some moments that maybe need a little bit of just like tuning and polishing, but from like a rough around the edges kind of we're sitting around sort of bearing witness to their story. It was a lovely selection for me. That's kind of my general appraisal. Mac, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, once again, this is a very musical theater, lovely piece where right from the beginning, first opening video montage, I was like, okay, Will knows his musicals and he knows how to pay homage to them with the way he just does the opening with the clever homage to the recent revival of Sunset Boulevard, but then also how he bookends it with Sunset Boulevard as well. As you said, Jill, his mashups, like he has the I Know Things Now and I Can't Say No, which are like, you never would think to put Oklahoma and Into the Woods as a mashup pairing, but when you put them together, it gives a very dark story because, as he says, the fact that so many little girls sing Little Red Song in Kiwanis, and the point of that song is sexual awakenings and sexual abuse. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be doing the song, like just how we should let kids sing Memory at Kiwanis, because that is not a song for a young person to sing. You have not lived enough life to sing a song about a dying cat. I will say, as Ryan knows, I am very anti like putting your therapy on stage where it's like people, you're just vomiting out your therapy. This was a good example of, and there's another show we'll talk about in this too, in this episode, where they struck the right balance of this is still a theater show, but also weaving in a bit of their own personal therapizing about their life experiences that help inform the piece. But it's still a strong enough piece on its own that Will could have changed the names and been anybody else, and it still would have been a strong show. It never felt like, oh my God, I'm just watching you sit in your therapist's office, emoting. And I'm like, done enough of those shows. Don't need to sit in more therapy offices. Everybody's got their own trauma they got to deal with. Anyway, point being is Will did a great job balancing this line. And I thought that was really strong. Even the way he twisted the Hey Bestie line, where at the beginning it's really positive, but as he gets into his darker parts of his life story, the way he uses Hey Bestie as a coping mechanism almost, you felt everybody's change of the way they were saying it, where they went from positive to empathetic to feeling like, I don't know if I should be saying this to him in this moment, because he's clearly going through a lot, and it's not giving him a falseness, but it's like you're feeling the pull of this moment. Oh, buddy, like I'm not feeling Hey Bestie anymore because I'm feeling sad for you.
It's interesting that you're giving this feedback, Mac, because I was chatting with some of my friends who did see it either with me or another iteration, and they actually felt quite jarred by the setup of the musical blueprint and then sort of utilizing that as like I don't want to say like putting a cloak on the musicals, but they were kind of jarred by the experience. But I was like, okay, well, interesting, because I think I was welcoming of it because I was getting to know more about my friend who is an artist and like explaining themselves in the way that they are. It's interesting, Mac, that you are giving this feedback of you felt that it struck that balance, because I did hear some folks felt that it didn't, or it didn't sit well.
I don't think it's supposed to sit well because
that's what I said.
Because for an audience, like the way this show is sold is this is happy, light person talking about their vinyl collection. You're not expecting to all of a sudden get into deeper, darker relationship stuff. And neither was I. And at first I was like, whoa, Nelly, like, where are we going here, everybody? And then as it went along, and because he was so good at using the musical numbers, he's doing what musicals should do when written properly is, if you can't talk, you sing. Yeah. And he chose numbers that added to the emotion of the moment and helped him express the emotions he was feeling. Like the mashup of, I know things now and I can't say no, is a good mashup for that moment when he is getting groomed and courted by this faculty member that he ends up having the affair with. Where on one hand, he says, I know things now as I'm going through this relationship, but at the same time, I can't say no and say no to this guy. So it's really done there. Now, I will say, I think the end needs to be tightened up a bit more because we got so dark into what he went through in this relationship that all of a sudden that it's just, and Ethel Merman disco. And
yes,
it's like,
let me do a disco,
and it's like, okay. He says like, yes, I'm coming out of it, I'm doing better type thing, but it's like I feel we needed maybe one or two musical numbers where they weren't like heavy ballads, like the Sunset Boulevard one that he bookends with, like even the numbers that are happy, like the Willy Wonka one. What's the one he sings, Ryan?
Is it Pure Imagination?
Yes,
I haven't seen the show, so
thank you.
I know Willy Wonka, but
thank you. I couldn't remember the name of the song. I could hear it in my head, I'm like tip of my tongue. Anyway, point being is like even the numbers he picked that were earlier on had a more melancholy, because he talks about Sweet Charity and how he's always looking for love. As much as I enjoyed the element of him in his romantic life, the parts that were really fun were him as a kid getting to experience theater and getting to go to see Hairspray in Toronto and things like that. Like, I would have loved a bit more of just Will being Will, but I also get that this relationship is a major inflection point in a story where you can't do one without the other. But maybe something more toward the final third where he talked about how Ethel Merman disco always gives him the energy to keep going, which is great. That's a great moment. But maybe find a few other songs that, as he's been coming out of this, where like, it's a song that maybe helped him early on in therapy, that gave him some pep in his step, post-breakup, whatever. A little bit more light to help balance the really dark spaces we go into. Because it is hard for an audience to pivot out of that. I think other musicals like Les Mis is a show that, has a lot of dark material. And they're upbeat songs, but they're always still in tone with the show itself. Like even The Master of the Houses or, Beggars at the Feast or Lovely Ladies. They're peppy tunes, but they still have a very dark undertow to them that never get away from the tone. This felt sometimes the tones were battling each other of happy with musicals and darker therapy moments. And yes, he threaded them and I was invested in the story, but I do feel we maybe could have used a bit more happy moments, like happy Will moments that weren't associated with the relationship side of it.
Yeah, it strikes an interesting chord. I do think we're seeing a lot of this on the Toronto stages and at large now too, where folks are doing these solo shows where they're actively talking about something that has just happened to them, like literally it is fresh, or it is something that they're still going through. So it's that interesting chord that struck with me of some artists are now doing work that's still in process. And so there is that raw element that like they don't really maybe know how they want to resolve it. So like having us kind of sit in that unknown sort of murky feeling with them is kind of indicative of the real life. But I hear what you're saying from like a brass tacks musical resolve way, like from a form perspective, Mac. Like maybe before we got into Sunset Boulevard, which was a super powerful piece to kind of send us home, I was sobbing. But maybe there was a little of that, like keep going, maybe one or two songs. There's some audience interaction, which from a safety point of view, I also loved. I did hold the disco ball.
Classic show.
That's one thing I did love is that he did snap in and out of breaking the fourth wall and checking in on the audience and also like gathering friends into the space. So I think that was like a lovely added element to the journey that's definitely going on underneath this artist that a lot of people in the city know Will. Like, we know Will as this awesome influencer, brilliant musical theater artist, 2 shows in the Fringe, but many of us probably don't know this side of Will.
Well, we all have that underbelly, right? Where we all have the outward, as Ryan would say from Jekyll and Hyde, the facade. You know, but at the same time, there is that darker underbelly that we all carry. Of the traumas and the scars. As you pointed out, there's a lot of shows that are people still processing their life story. And that's where I feel it gets a little too therapy, where I'm like, if you don't have any type of ending and it just feels you vomited out emotions at me about what's going on in your life, now I'm just watching a therapy session. Will was able to land it enough that I went, okay, this balanced it. If he hadn't hit the ending the way he does, I would have come away going, nice piece, but maybe go talk to your therapist some more and figure out an ending for your piece. Because right now it just feels like you're doing this, but he didn't. He was able to land the ship or land the plane. So,
and I'm finding a lot of artists are kind of doing that right now, which is really, really
it's the hot topic thing to do.
And it's lovely. It's also to show the growth that we've had in accepting mental health and like how your journey may not be resolved, but certain moments might be. And it's, you find you're safe enough to create art in those moments. So that's lovely. And Will, like I said, is hoping to get this on stages elsewhere post Fringe too. So
he and Gabby Epstein should team up and do like a 2-act cabaret where she does 1-act cabaret, he does the 2nd-act cabaret, or vice versa.
Little tag team. And we are moving on to our 3rd show of the episode. This show is called Mirv-ish, in quotations, an improvised musical, and production company is Mirv-ish. And Mac, you were the one of the trio that saw this one. So
I'm surprised, Jill, you couldn't make it out to this one. This one I feel like would have been a Jill Alley show.
Well, I was doing 7 shows of my own on top of seeing 10 shows for us.
Well,
so
Jill,
we are.
I will say they do improv nights every month. So if you are interested in this, Jill, you can go see this theater company do this type of show again in Toronto. This show is a lot of fun. The artists all come out on stage and they ask for a conflict that this piece will be centered around. And just as in the case with $20 Sandwich, where they ask for the volunteer and somebody shoots their hand up really fast, same thing happened. However, this time, someone did give them something meaty to work with, unlike the last time that happened with $20.
Which is usually the case with improv. You just got a dud with that one show.
Yeah, we did. But in this case, we got a good one because this woman was in the front row. Her hand shoots up and they go, okay, you clearly got an idea about it. And she goes, yes, my conflict is LSD is now being put in the city of Toronto water supply and everybody is now drugged on LSD. And the audience all went, whoa. And the actors all went, okay, we can work with this. And so off the show went, and it's the whole story of the Toronto City Water Supply got laced with LSD and the ultimate fallout. And you also get the whole concept of corporate greed, where basically the people who run Coca-Cola are getting mad that people are now drinking so much water. So you bring cocaine back into Coca-Cola to make that more drinkable. Ryan, you mentioned how with Whose Lineage that you missed some of the roughness of the improv. I will say there was good roughness in this, where at one point there was a scene where 3 actors walked out on stage and one of them thought they were doing one scene and the other 2 thought they were doing another scene.
Nice.
And so they ultimately had to find a way to merge it because the one character was playing the wife who thought she was talking to her husband. The guy and the other girl who came out on stage thought that they were doing a different scene, like another dinner scene that didn't include the wife. And so ultimately they end up having like the bosses over for dinner, and he has to confess that he's the one that laced the LSD by dropping his LSD into the water supply by accident. It was a very funny show. I will give full credit to the accompanist who, once again, is also improving. They have no music that they are following, like no sheet music. They are really just vibing on stage.
I think that's James Patton.
Thank you.
Just looking at me, they're credited as musical director.
Yeah, so James did a really great job. The only thing I wish is that every song was either a duet, a trio, or a group number, or had backup singers. There was never a real solo moment for any character. And I feel if you're going to do a musical, you got to give people a chance to sing a solo. And I know it's hard to improv a musical ballad, but these people are strong enough that I think you could have done it. And there were moments where characters I feel needed. If you're going to tell a full proper musical, you got to let somebody, at least 2 people have a ballad in this story.
There's got to be an I Want song.
There's well, they kind of had I Want songs because it was like a duet. But once again, you got 3 different storylines all competing, and yet all kind of dovetailed together like a Seinfeld episode. Because they're all
that's impressive.
It is, but at the same time, I feel like maybe backstage before the show starts, you draw straws and go, okay, these two people, they get a chance to do a solo where nobody else comes out on stage and it's just these two. The audiences won't know who's going to get the solo, and we're not sure where they're going to fall in the story. But it's like you assign two people that you get a chance to sing a ballad, and it's gonna be anything. It could be a comedy, it could be 11 o'clock number, power ballad. Who knows what you're gonna get?
A villain song, maybe
a villain song. But it's like I feel like that was part of it that was needed. It was a lot of group singing, and after a while, it kind of all blended together. Where the story was moving along, but the music and the singing kind of blended because they all kind of started sounding the same. Because like, okay, these two people are gonna sing it, and then all of a sudden we got backup singers again. So like there was a little bit of repetitiveness, but it was fun enough that I was enjoying it in the time. But as I walked away, I went, wait a minute, there was no solo ballad in this. Everybody was always out on stage. Like, I get it. You're an improv group working off each other. But if you built a strong enough story where I'm actually now invested in how are you going to resolve this issue, you can't have a solo for the CEO of the company who is trying to profit off of putting cocaine back in Coca-Cola to combat water. You don't need a duet for that. You could just have the CEO sing a song about the villain song, right? Or have a moment where the mother whose daughter is laced on LSD is panicking, and you find out her husband is the one that laced the city water supply. Like they did really well building on the concept of everybody tripping balls on stage. Like that was a really fun concept where like they brought in like two people playing like the good angel and bad angel who end up hooking up on stage and like totally neglecting their job of like being somebody's angel and devil. Because they just end up like getting together at some point. It's really funny. Like they did a really good job of building a fun story around this conflict. But I feel the only thing that was really missing is they needed a few character ballad moments, maybe one or two, that would have really brought the whole show together.
Can I ask you a question about the show? Because you're the only one of the three of us who saw it on like Whose Lineage, where we could compare notes about two different performances. Something that I've been thinking about in relation to certainly a lot of the improv shows that we discussed in part one, like Whose Lineage or $20 Sandwich Ruins Your Childhood, or You Choose the Improv Murder Mystery, or You Up is also an interesting one in this conversation, is about how these shows take different approaches to structuring. What are the bones of how they're guiding this improv? With something like $20 Sandwich is very straightforward. They just interview someone and then they do a sketch show based on what they get inspired by. Ones like Whose Lineage have to get more sophisticated with, we need to make a Shakespeare resembling plot line out of this. You Choose, I thought, was very impressive in the way that it had mini games that advanced the plot throughout this murder mystery. So you described the plot of the individual performance. You saw this LSD situation. But what I'm trying to discern listening to you is what is the repeatable part that gives this shape? Is it just that, okay, we got a suggestion and now we're just going to get on stage and sing?
That's it. From everything I understand from it, every show is different because every conflict is different.
I'm not saying...
Now, mind you, they may have done maybe there was a show where, like, as you said, with your Whose Lineage, where they said, hey, we just did a wedding show, like, we love your story, but we're going to get something else because we want to, not potentially fall back on something we just did. So maybe there is an element of that where if they do get a similar suggestion, hey, somebody brought cocaine to a party and didn't tell anybody, and it's a hangover type situation. And all of a sudden, we just did LSD in the water, so we're not going to do that again.
But I think what Ryan's asking, Mac, is did you think that they jumped into sort of like a pre-known order of how they're going to map out this musical? Like,
no,
do you think
I couldn't catch that vibe
because
of the roughness of it, where like they were just walking out on stage and the scene would go, and it was one of those things of, and all of a sudden the music would start under like vamping, and then they would get into a song where it wasn't like they knew. Like I think they kind of had an understanding of, if two people go out on stage, unless you got something really good to add to the scene, do not go out on stage. Like, if you just had a scene where you did it in a moment and now you've left the stage and two new people have come out on stage, do not come right back out on stage to add yourself back into a new scene. I'm sure they have some rules of improv there where it's like, don't keep coming back around.
I feel like that would be so difficult because, like, if there was a setup of like, hey, whatever theme we get, we're going to roll with it. But these are, like Ryan is saying, the bones of like, we're going to start with an opening number. We're going to do an I Want song. We're then going to do a duet. So know that this is the structure and just like copy and paste the theme. But from my understanding, Mac, that structure wasn't a template for them.
No. Because like literally like the first scene was this mother-daughter trying to get her right to go to school, and she's drunk the water in the morning and she's tripping balls. And the mom's like, what the hell is going on? Go back up to your room. And then the next scene is totally different, where it's the CEO of this other company and her lackey assistant who are like, hey, reports just came in and water sales are up and Coca-Cola sales are down. And it's like, okay, we are in polar different storylines here that somehow we're going to have to get them to sandwich together.
Yeah.
They weren't quite following the musical structure where like song number 3 will be your I Want song. You need to have a supporting character song like I Can't Say No, set up the B plot. Like they didn't quite follow the musical theater rules in that way. And so like that was the other point where I was really kind of confused. Like, where are we going with this? Because it feels like a lot of scenes, they kind of connect on the same theme of LSD in the water, but the story isn't quite clicking. And it wasn't until like the final third where they actually were able to kind of start, actually, the moment they actually started cinching it kind of together was when the 3 of them came out on stage, and there was the moment of, what scene are we doing? Where 2 people thought they were doing one scene and the other person thought they were doing the other scene. They had to kind of find a way to start pairing. That's when we got the whole concept of the boss and the coworker bringing the boss home for dinner. And it was like, okay, now I can start seeing where we're starting to seam rough sew this piece together. Because up to that point, it was kind of a bit weird. And I was like, I'm not sure like how you're going to pull all this piece together.
See, I think why I asked this question is because you're right, Mac. Like musicals have a tried and true structure that one would expect if you're going to do something this chaotic, that they would build the show around following that structure. And we know, okay, I Want song goes here, villain song goes here. Now this is the lovers duet. Now this is the B plot. The fact that they didn't do that, again, I wish I had seen this show because it sounds really funny. And then we could have compared notes about how they approached it 2 different ways. But it is almost more impressive that they set themselves a very chaotic task. But also, like, why did you make it so hard for yourself when you're working within a genre that has patterns?
I think part of the reason why it is a bit more chaotic is because, once again, they don't have the solos. Like, the thing that makes a musical is you have central characters that, it's hard to improv that and figure out who's going to be your central character when all of you are kind of on the same playing field. But it's like, once again, I think that's something where backstage, whoever draws the 2 straws, who get the 2 solo numbers, that will dictate that, okay, you 2 will be our leads, who are like central figures. Now, whether that's hero, villain, lovers, who knows? It all depends on the conflict you're going to get.
But let the suggestion dictate the structure.
Exactly. But the fact that, like, they didn't have a solo song really did affect how you could tell the story, because if you don't have a solo number early on that's dictating I want this, it's like you're just dealing with the one conflict of LSD in the water, but it's like, how are you propelling it forward? And you kind of stumbled your way into it. So those things were like, I feel like once again, I think the solo numbers would help really bring this, like, hone this concept in and allow it to be even stronger going forward.
Our next show we're going to be discussing is UNSUNG, the Accidental Villains of History. And this is by Astros Productions. Ryan and Mackenzie both got a chance to see this, so the 2 of you will discuss. Give us a summary and let's chat about it.
Ryan, you go first. I've been talking a bit.
Mac, did you read my review for Next that I wrote for this?
I started it and then fell asleep in my bed last night.
So long and boring. So I reviewed this show for Next. And like I think I said in the previous episode, that this year I didn't commit myself to writing reviews for specific shows or a specific number of shows. I knew I was covering everything I'd see on the Cup. I would only write reviews for Next if I felt inspired to say something in particular. And boy, did this show give me that. Possibly by accident, which feels appropriate to the theme of the accidental villains of history. So this is essentially a funny cabaret song cycle musical, a musical review with a U. So we have a 6-person cast in black and white outfits on a bare stage, apart from an octagonal riser in the middle of it. And
some chairs.
Some chairs, and they bring in props and costumes as needed. But they're singing songs about people whose contributions to history have gone unrecorded and have, through no malice or ill intent, contributed to horrible things happening, and that's what makes them the accidental villains of history. So we start with this opening number that sets up like a table of contents of where it's going to go. Honestly, after the opening number ended up, like, I feel like that's the whole show. Like I like, because we get like little snippets, and then they go through in more detail about each of these vignettes and episodes, and each one gets a song, and each of our 6 performers gets to be prominently featured in one of them. But like, it is just exactly what it says on the box, as we are doing these characters. Now, I had so many weird thoughts about this that, Mac, maybe do you want to give more of a general appraisal before I get into my philosophical onion peeling of what this show is?
Sure. I will say, fun show, well mixed. Once again, whoever was their sound designer did a good job working on all this.
Let me see if they're credited so we can shout them out. The arranger is credited as Bennett Langdon and Noah Bajik Dickinson.
Not sure if they did the actual sound mix, but their orchestrations were beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this was a fun show where I was immediately sold when I saw this as a Fringe show. I was like, I want to see this. This sounds like a really funny idea. Like, the person who didn't put enough lifeboats on the Titanic, the person who lets in the Trojan horse, got the whole thing about the couple who blame a cow for burning down the city, the students who send their teacher over in a barrel in Niagara Falls. Like, we got all these great moments of history. And I love the fact that in their opening number, they were like, we will not be perfectly historically accurate. Do not hold us to any of this. Like, if you want to go be historically accurate, go read Wikipedia, basically.
No, they said, please go to school.
I loved this show. I definitely think this could be a continual Fringe installment where every year they take on different stories in history to do this type of thing, where you just pick different people of history. That could be interesting. Speaking of, like, the Odyssey and the Iliad and the Trojan War, like, you could easily do a story about the guy who opens the bag of wind that blows Odysseus and his crew back out into the ocean after Odysseus is like, don't touch that bag. And they're like, well, screw you, buddy, you asshole, like hiding all the treasure in the lower deck. I'm going to open this bag. And they get blown back.
Somebody recently watched a movie, I think.
I think so. Or, read the book.
Or both.
Or both. Anyway, but that wind story is not in the movie, I will say. So don't get your hopes up on a bag of wind.
Well, now I'm not going to see it.
Damn it, Ryan.
I was hoping for the wind. I also hear there's nobody is killing me. Like
nobody, there's none of that.
What's the point of doing the Cyclops? Anyway, we're not talking about Nolan.
So there's lots of great things in history. The Titanic one bugged me a bit because they did have enough lifeboats. Because legally in 1912, it wasn't how many people you had on the boat, it was the weight of the boat. So technically, they actually had more than enough lifeboats for the ship at the time. They actually were better than the standard of the 1912 nautical rules of the sea. Wow. So the fact that they were like, yeah, somebody forgot to put on lifeboats, it's like, no, that's not the case. Yeah, they put in an extra davit that could hold an extra row of lifeboats, but J. Bruce Ismay was like, yeah, we don't need the extra boat because we're unsinkable. But it's also the fact that he's like, we already are doing more than enough than we need to do for maritime law of the day. So that one, I get it. We're not being historically accurate. But that one being
But the Trojan horse is completely historically accurate.
Well, that one's fun. Like, that one's fun because it's like, yeah, who was the idiot that thought, hey, a giant wooden horse on a beach from our enemies?
I'm pointing out that that's not actually history.
I know. Okay. I know. I will say my favorite one, though, was the cow one. That was really funny. Where at the end, the cow just gets carried off mooing as it's going to be, like, killed for burning down the city when really it's the lovers. Like, that was a really fun one. But the Titanic one, I was like, I still have to look up whether or not they actually did charge a young woman or a younger person about the lifeboats, because that could have been the case. I haven't read all the...
Okay, so this brings me to my first philosophical question about this. Okay, obviously, yes. If you want to learn history, don't go to the theater, go to school, as they say in the opening number. I had a question about, and I did not do the research for this one just because I did not have time while seeing 33 Fringe shows to look up every single character from this. But, like, it's unclear if these are fictionalized, like, completely made up people, or I think some of them are real and some are not. One. Well, that's the thing. Like, the Titanic one is interesting because it's not just some Joe Blow who didn't make enough lifeboats. Mm-hmm. It's a child, like a literal teenager who was put on trial. Yeah. And that's not anything I'd ever heard of before, and I
hadn't heard of it either.
But it's like too weird to not have some sort of like grain of truth in. Like, why would a child have been responsible for this?
Yeah. Which makes back in labor law days, they were just like throwing everybody to work.
Like, maybe, but like it's so bizarre that I feel like that must come from somewhere. That must be like a real person or a real trial. Maybe. I don't know. Again, didn't look it up.
Can I ask a question? Sure. All the other characters who are like representing these villains, like is it a mix, like you said? Like, some of them are real, or are all of them kind of following this trope of like a teenager, or like...
This is where I'm going with this. Like, no, it's not that specific trope, but like some of them seem like maybe real. One's like the Trojan horse. Like, no, that's not a real thing that happened in history. But hey, if we're following the story, somebody must have been the horse girl who really likes horses and therefore let the horse in. Yeah, like why would you let something that seems like so obviously a trap into the gates? Well, it's because they love horsey. So
we love a horse, but then also if we go by the history or the myths mythology. Of the mythology of Iliad, it's because I think it's a gift to the gods, where it's like Athena, it's a gift to Athena.
Fun fact: the horse never comes up in the Iliad.
True.
So, like, these characters that they appoint, are they making a point to turn this, like, to turn history on the nose of, like,
I think
younger
it's just
kids? Because I feel like
it's not
giving
all
lot of,
younger
like,
kids. It's not all younger kids, I will say to that point. So, the one that I feel like must be a joke, but again, I don't know, I haven't researched, and the show does not differentiate kind of in this way, is that the person who invented the guillotine is some guy named Guy, who is a watermelon salesman who invents a new device to cut out in the watermelons, and then Robespierre shows up and like, we're taking this, we're having a revolution.
If I remember my French Revolution history correctly, the guy who did invent the guillotine did end up getting killed by it. Same thing with Robespierre, who, was eventually killed by
to me, it's giving, like, meme culture, like, a lot of kids these days, too, of, like, smudging, like, not historically getting the accurate results.
I'm not faulting it for historical inaccuracy. It's a comedy show.
It's funny, it's kind of funny.
And they say in the opening that they're not trying to be historically accurate.
But what I'm questioning is, like, so some of them just get, like, way too weird, and it's, like, even some of them also feel like they bend the premise. Like, the two kids who send their teacher down Niagara. So that teacher is the real person who went down Niagara Falls in a barrel. Yeah. But the explanation that they come up with for this show is because she was a teacher, two of her students probably wanted to get out of their final exam, so they convinced her to go down Niagara Falls for the glory and hoping she would die. That's not even an accidental villain. Like, I don't think that's truly what happened in this history. Yes. But, like, those are people who are trying to kill someone. Yeah. So, like, we're bending our premise here. Also, the final one, the fourth Apollo 11 astronaut, who I don't think any such person exists, but decided I didn't get the credit, so I'm going to start spreading the conspiracy theory that the moon landing was fake.
Right,
who is this person? Like, in their song, they talk
about... because I don't think there is, because there were 3 people.
Of course there's 3 people. Like, there's no 4th person in Apollo 11. Like, one of the lyrics of the song is, they mention Mikey Collins, and he never left the ship. But, like, yes, of course there's no 4th person. So, like, these are all, I assume, mostly made up, but the weird blurring of, like, wait, which ones are? I think the kid from the Titanic kind of must be true, because what a weird thing to make up.
Listen, we're also living in the land of AI. We're all, like... there's a thing going around right now of, like, a dancing chihuahua trope that's just like, what is this chihuahua doing random thing? So I feel like there is just an inkling of like a random sprinkling, putting this into sort of a generator. What weird layer can you add to historical facts?
Okay, sure. But, like, just, like, right off the bat, I think it's, like, there's this kind of weird porousness of who sort of makes the... Funny thing I'll mention is, so the album is on Spotify. Like, they've done this show before, this Fringe iteration, and they recorded an album.
My notes, I hope there is an album, so I'm glad to know there is.
So there is, and I listened to it after writing my review, and you know what I noticed that was really funny listening to the album? Is that there's a song that was deleted from the Fringe version.
Ooh.
In fact, the moon landing song was listed as a bonus track that I guess they swapped in for this one that was deleted.
Okay.
A song called Not See, N-O-T space S-E-E, which is about the dean of admissions from the 1930s German art school that rejected Hitler's application. And
that I would have wanted to have seen versus the Apollo.
Well, I'm guessing they thought maybe this is a little too real and a little too dark for this peppy show about, look at all these funny people from history who we probably made up. Like, yeah, that probably was a real person who could not see that they were creating the Nazis. But it's a very well written song, but
there's so many layers there.
So this is now we're getting into sort of what I dug into in my review. I don't think the concept of an accidental villain makes sense conceptually. And this is the part where I feel like they're raising philosophical questions accidentally here, because the show is not interested in interrogating any of this. It's just like, haha, funny people from history that we made up. But like, to be an accidental villain means that you had no malintent, you had no, what in most legal frameworks is referred to with the Latin term mens rea, that is the guilty mind. This is why manslaughter is less of a charge than murder, because you didn't actually intend to do it. This is why an insanity plea can get you off with lesser charges. Most legal frameworks require some sort of ill intent to justify a punishment or justify the condemnation. The concept of an accidental villain, with the exception of the Niagara Falls case, where it seems like they actually did intend to kill their teacher, most of these characters just feel like, I got mixed up in these historical forces outside my control, and the show is judging them for something that is completely outside of their control. And yet there's also this interesting sort of thing in here where, on one hand, the show is acknowledging that people get swept up in these large historical forces without any ill intent, and yet it's still putting the spotlight on these people to judge them, to cast them as villains. Like, which one is it, I guess? And in the cases where any of these are real people, which I'm not sure how many, if any, are, in the opening number, they mention, like, you know our stories, but not our names. Now you know our names, they say in the final number. So it's like, what is the point of, if these people have been lucky enough to be absented from the historical record, what is the point of, what are we trying to do by putting them back on the record if we acknowledge that they didn't mean to do the bad things that we can now, because we know their names, hold them accountable for, but not hold them accountable for because they didn't do it on purpose? It's just this really interesting cluster of like Kantian morality. There's this like hardline consequentialist view that if you were technically responsible for these things that went wrong, you deserve to be cast a villain, but also because we're acknowledging that you didn't mean to. Yeah, I don't know, I think I articulated this better in that written review, but like, it's wild.
We'll link it down below.
Yeah, sure, or not, I don't care. I'll put it on the screen. But yeah, it's weird. And like, if this really feels like it wants to be an unplug your brain and don't think about it kind of show, and yet I couldn't help thinking about it because...
Well, my thing is with you, like right from the Titanic one, my brain was going, why do we pick this person, when the more interesting pick would have been, do Bruce Ismay and have him argue that actually I wasn't a coward, I got on the boat because it was the last boat off the ship, I'm the owner of the company, and by the way, I was legally, you know, my ship went well and above beyond what was needed because we had more than enough lifeboats for what the maritime law says, and we couldn't launch enough lifeboats at the time as it was, so more lifeboats would not have helped the case. Like, I feel there would have been a more interesting, more rich story.
But is that an accidental villain?
Yeah, like accidental villains in the sense of like people who have been maybe cast as a villain, but really you have a decent reason that people just overlook because it's simpler to go, Ismay, you're a bad guy because there weren't enough lifeboats on the boat. Or, you know, pick someone like a Linda Tripp, who, you know, reports Monica Lewinsky for like the Bill Clinton skin. We're like, yeah, should she have recorded those phone calls with Monica Lewinsky? No, that was wrong. But at the same time, there's a rich conversation to be had there. So, have a much more, I don't know.
I think to sum up what we're kind of both saying here is, this is a show that raises a lot of interesting questions that it doesn't seem interested in exploring.
Yes.
And I think a better version of this would be willing to unpack things, raise questions about morality. It's so funny to have this show about people who did these accidentally villainous things that isn't interested in the courtroom adversarial, putting history on trial logic of what a show like this could be. As I said at the end of that review, is this a spectacle of judgment, condemnation, mockery, forgiveness, or is it just a spectacle of catchy show tunes? And from their perspective, I think that's what they landed on.
Clearly, this team has sung a lot of thoughts into both of your brains.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
It's a fun show.
The next show we're going to be discussing is Crucified Woman by College Street Theater Company. And this show, Ryan and I both had the chance to see. Different show times, though. Ryan, do you want to give us a synopsis? And then we can chat about it.
Okay, so this is it's another one of the unconventional venues, site-specific performances. It's staged in College Street United Church, so it does have a bit of a site specificity to it. When you enter the church, you sit in the pews and you see there is the statue of the crucified woman of the title hanging over the stage. So this is a dual storyline that converge. On one hand, it is about the author Margaret Lawrence, who many can-lit aficionados will know well. She wrote The Stone Angels, she wrote The Diviners, which was adapted at Stratford a few seasons ago. And it is about her dealing with the morality police trying to censor her books and keep them out of schools, and the good fight that she fights around that. And then it's also following this group of church folks who at the beginning we were not quite sure how they relate to her storyline, but they're trying to, like, I don't even remember I saw this also very early in the Fringe, so apologies if I get some details wrong, but they're trying to get more people excited about church, I think, by bringing in this new piece of art by a local artist, or maybe even a German artist, I don't even, by a cutting edge new artist who made this sculpture of a crucified woman. And they saw the piece of art and they're like so in awe. They have this rapturous experience of what it represents. They decide we must have this in our church and it's very important. And they, similar to Margaret Lawrence, experience a public backlash of how this art is sacrilegious, it's no good, it represents Christ as a woman is crucified. So yeah, basically we have these two converging storylines of people respecting art and having public backlash against it. And then ultimately Margaret Lawrence, while on a trip to Toronto, she encounters the crucified woman in this church, and she has something like a religious experience in relation to it. As a short capsule summary, I feel like that's kind of what this show is. Jill, anything important you want to add that I missed?
Yeah, no, that pretty much summed it up.
So what do you think of it?
Yeah, I kind of had the similar feeling as you, Ryan. Like, after I saw it, I had to kind of break it up into two, because it did feel like we were watching almost like two shows at the same time, following the sort of author's journey and then following the statue's journey. And then they did end up merging at the end. It was interesting. I kind of gleaned at this at our last episode, this idea of like religiosity on stage. I feel like is a tiny bit of a hot topic right now. Like we chatted about Mary Mary, and obviously Crucified Woman does this. And I'm kind of left with the same feeling I had with Mary Mary, where I was like, I'm not quite sure what the full-on take-home of this was. Like, I do love that it was sort of spinning, like, how do we view women, or how do we insert women literally onto the altars? Like, how do we leverage sort of these, like, more avant-garde female depictions? And religion is kind of just, like, the catalyst for that. But yeah, the cast was really good at like weaving us in between, playing multiple characters. I'll just say generally, because I think all of these actors did really well of changing their demeanors or accents or states of mind, because they do play a handful, each of them do, and I think all of them did that really well. But I did find, like, I don't know if it was the partnership of the script and me left with this, I'm not quite sure what the take-home message is. I don't know if you want to kind of...
I think similar to Mary Mary, I feel like I see where you're coming from, but I think I have the opposite problem with it, is that the take-home message is simple, just kind of bland, which was the same thing I felt about Mary Mary. Unfortunately, and I saw both of them on the same day, because on Canada Day, the main venues were closed, so I did a bunch of unconventional venues that day. Yeah, like it's about censorship bad, banning books is bad, don't do that, banning art is bad, let people have their free expression with their opinions through a creative medium. And yeah, like, I agree. And like that's kind of how I felt about this. It's very parabolistic in a way due to the church setting and the religious themes. The playwright and director is Jeffrey Dale, who is not somebody I'd ever heard of before. Looking at their bio here, they're actually a minister, which is interesting and like clearly a cool progressive minister. They have they, he pronouns. And that's cool. Like, and I love that for them. And I love that they wrote a play. They think, they have other theater credits here. So this isn't their first rodeo, but like leaving this show prior to reading the program bio, I felt like, oh yeah, it makes sense that this was a play written by a priest who's just trying their hands at theater. In my opinion, a profound lack of dramaturgy, and not just in the practical sense of having a dramaturg come in and give feedback, but just like a structurally, this doesn't feel like a play. It kind of just feels like a bunch of stuff. And like the things that felt very writerly were just the kind of like, most groan-worthy cliche type lines in there. A huge writing pet peeve line that this play does is somebody says something offhanded. Everyone else is like, you're a genius. Wait, why am I a genius? You said this offhanded thing that gave me an unrelated idea. Oh, I am a genius. Like, yeah. Huge eyes roll to the back of my head when I hear something like that. Yeah, it's like to me a very simple parable, the dual parable about censorship and why it's bad. I kind of would have liked to see maybe more of a thought-provoking counter argument from the morality police side of it, so we could actually have an interesting, rigorous dialogue about this, because, what I think makes this so timely is that we do have a lot of interesting discussions about, do you kick Trump off of Twitter? Do you deplatform Joe Rogan? If people are saying harmful things, what are the limits of free speech that we accept? Because I agree there should be limits to it, but when you have novelist writes a book that's a little risque and with its sexual content, and artist makes statue where Jesus is a woman, like we all agree that these aren't things that should be censored So we're having, in my opinion, a pretty milquetoast conversation about censorship if we center it around these.
One thing that I think like would offer maybe a bit more like suturing is at the end you sort of had our author bear witness to the statue and then have that sort of epiphany like, oh, like I'm inspired by this. I kind of would have loved that to be woven in a little bit more throughout. Like this would obviously not be factual, but like for some reason, like the statue and the author are like in constant communication with each other. Because I feel like a lot of the times we were just getting like one clump and then the next clump and then the next clump. And then all of a sudden at the end, the two plots were kind of coming together. If in a weird way, like we saw the author as a crucified woman and this crucified woman is becoming an author of how women should be approaching the religiosity. Like if we sutured that a little bit sooner, I think that would make this a stronger like theatrical piece.
Yeah, I would agree. I will say, just to give one cast shout out, Alicia Douglas, who played a variety of characters in this, and one of the prominent ones was Margaret Lawrence's agent. They just had like a funny way about them. They kind of like got the comedy in a way that maybe not all the actors did, and in a way that lines that I probably wouldn't think were terribly funny on the page, they had a way of delivering them that was kind of just like a bit over the top, but in a fun way. I would definitely give them a shout out. I don't know, is there anyone in particular, or did you just like the cast as a whole?
Yeah, I'll just say the cast as a whole, because I think like as I was making my way through, there's enough like characterization and like I said, demeanor and accent switching that I think everyone did a pretty solid job at. Yeah.
So I don't know how much else there is to say about this. It kind of just is what it is.
Yeah, one funny little remark in my audience, I would say we were all stars at this, is that the director did part of the intro speech and say, "Hi, folks. So as you notice, the pews that you're sitting on are quite rickety. If you do need to move, please take the opportunity to move during scene transitions." So we did a really good job of that. But I will say it meant that some scene transitions were quite rickety to the point where people would laugh sometimes because we were all wiggling. But I get that's just
classic church move.
Yeah, it's a church pew, and like I said, good job, audience, for doing our part in those transitions.
I think that's actually really funny that you mentioned that, because I must have seen an earlier performance in you that had no such pre-show announcement, and there was just like so much creaking, and I was like afraid to move because I could tell like every time I just shift a little bit.
So it was lovely. It was one of those things like you're not going to know until you have all the butts in the seats to then string that into as part of your Fringe intro.
A stealth audience participation where you all became active players in the sound design.
What does it mean if church pews creak in the backgrounds of our mind? The next show we're going to be chatting about, and I am sad that I couldn't catch this one, but you all caught the fromage.
We did.
Catching the Cheese Pervert, a Priscilla Patton mystery by 3LG Productions. So Ryan and Mac, you both saw that. One of you pop us a recap and let's chat.
I will just say, Ryan, the gentleman who you interviewed the one time who talked about good Fringe posters,
Phil Rickaby.
This is what got me into this show, was this great poster they had of the cow with the Sherlock Holmes hat and the
very clearly AI generated.
AI generated, but brilliant. Well done. It caught my eye. And as someone who wrote his own cheese heist play, I did. And so I was very interested in this. And this is a fun one where you're in Ontario and it's on a dairy farm in this small town. And there is a cheese pervert who is going around in a trench coat who puts various cheeses on his genitalia and then flashes people with that. And it is causing a disturbance in the dairy community, and some people think it is a plot by soy people who are trying to discredit dairy for their benefit. And you have this amateur detective, Priscilla Patton, who is also a life influencer.
An anti-vegan, pro-dairy influencer.
Exactly. And so she has set herself out to find the cheese pervert who is doing this horrible thing. It's her journey to solve the mystery that we are in. And I will say, the person who wrote the script, who was
Kayla Curran.
Thank you. They did a great job, Kayla, weaving in a whole bunch of cheese puns that were great.
Yes.
The cheese material was fun. Everybody was laughing. There were moments where the show got brought out into the audience. They got to actually move through the audience, and that was fun interaction. I was one that got yelled at for having a piece of cheese by my feet.
I did too.
Okay, there you go. Okay, I'm glad we both had that experience. It scared me. I was like, whoa, okay, why is she yelling at me? This is a small cast. It's only 2 people, and they are, Ryan, who are they?
Harley Curran plays Priscilla Patton, and everyone else is played by Jose Andreas Bordas.
And they are great, but I feel like my only ding on the show is I wish there was one more cast member who could have maybe taken on a few of the other roles, because having him play so many characters and then using puppets to try and differentiate himself, it sounds like he did a good job with it, but I feel like the story would have been that much longer if he had maybe one more person to play with, and maybe give them like the other female role, Priscilla's rival who pulled a carry on her and dumped a bucket of milk on her during the last like cheese festival competition, the butterball competition. It's a very fun show. It's well paced. The energy is good. I walked away liking it, enjoying it. It was a very fun, light piece. Like compared to other Fringe shows that were heavy this season, this was a joyous, fun mystery, low stakes. It was a lot of fun. And I'm talking with my dad, who grew up as a dairy farmer for the first 10 or so years of his life, where he suddenly moved over to beef cattle. He did confirm that, yes, they do dump out milk if they have a surplus. Like, yes, that is a thing. You know, raw milk is not something you should drink. It's not good for you. There's a reason why we pasteurize, because of the bacteria. Do not listen to RFK Jr.
Always good advice.
Always
Don't
good
listen
advice.
to RFK Jr.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, Ryan, what did you think of this?
Yeah, like I'm kind of exactly the same as you. Like it was a fun time. It's not one that you really like have to dwell on for a lot longer. Both of our performers, I thought, did a good job. I definitely see what you mean about how one additional performer could have ironed out. I know they've toured this. It has reviews from Edinburgh Fringe, like quotes on their site here, so they probably want to keep the team small and then create extra comedy from look at how this one guy is playing so many other people.
And he is fun. Like Jose does a fun job with all the different characters, whether it's the dad, the brother, the neglectful mother.
What was his name? Bradley Breslin Jr., who's like a Galen Weston type.
Yes.
Yeah, who with his no brand. Which is funny because like none of us saw Galen's Grocer this year. I saw the non-musical version of it last year, but it's funny that there's at least 2 shows that have a Galen Weston type in there. In fact, this was in the same venue that the non-musical version of Galen's Grocer was in last year, so that's always funny. Yeah, like I agree, like it's a fun time. I don't know if it gave me a lot to think about, and maybe not everything has to. I kind of like that our main character, our amateur sleuth here, is kind of like the villain of the story, not the villain of the mystery.
She's kind of like a Regina George type.
Yeah, like she's catty, she's mean to people, she's in on this like anti-veganism crusade that wants people to use more animal products. Like it's sort of funny, like you don't really expect to see that.
I love the fact that she's going to work as people who are lactose intolerant, thinking that it's like a made-up thing.
It's a made-up thing, it's a choice. Like come on, eat the dairy. Like she's kind of a jerk, and well, she never like wins me over. Like I think it's fun to follow that type of character. You usually expect to have a sympathetic protagonist, and she wasn't that.
She wasn't that sympathetic. Like none of the characters really are, except for maybe whatever her name was, the other girl.
Did I write her down? What her name was? I don't know.
I can't remember. Either way, point being, that character actually was sympathetic when you realize that she was wrongly villainized for something she didn't do. So this was a fun piece. Like I definitely think it was a lighter comedy of the Fringe season that I can see why people made it an audience pick, because it's something that if you want to just have a nice summer popcorn piece, cheese curd piece in this case, this fit the bill. Like it wasn't meant to be anything heavy or hard. It was a joy.
Like I will even say, you mentioned Phil Rickaby when I was on his pre-Fringe preview live stream. One of the questions he asked all of us panelists is there a show that like you didn't know anything about, but just like grabbed you and became a wild card pick? And this was the one that the title is amazing. Catching a cheese pervert, a Priscilla Patton mystery, which also makes it feel like it's like Encyclopedia Brown or Nancy Drew. Like this is part of a whole series, maybe. I don't know.
Right? I thought it was part of a whole series. Right? This is just the latest play. But I, for some reason, because there was a cow on the poster, I was like, are we getting like an anthropomorphized cow?
It's
that's
funny.
Gonna be talking and like try to solve kind of like the sheep murder movie that just came out with Hugh Jackman.
Well, like it's funny that you say that, because like the character we certainly learn is a human, and she's like a human influencer who works in the dairy industry. But I wasn't actually sure at first, partly inspired by the poster design, but like it took me a few scenes to realize, oh no, she is a person. She's not a cow. There was no like cow costume.
No.
But like the way she introduces her influencer YouTube videos or Instagram live videos, whatever, with like a hi there, my goats. Like that's what she calls her audience, her fan. Yeah. And there was just like little things she said that made me think, you know, she was mad at people for not using milk, which if you remember, there was this propaganda piece from the milk lobby a number of years ago about how brown cows were mad that people weren't drinking chocolate milk, which obviously comes from brown cows. It kind of did like strike me as that, oh, is this like a cow who's mad that people don't like milk? But no, eventually we do find that. Yeah. But the fact that I wasn't clear about that at first, largely because of the poster, I think is interesting. I also noticed just one last thing here. Yes. I'm looking at the page they have on Fringe here, and it says at the bottom of the blurb, regrettably inspired by true events. I'm guessing there's a real cheese pervert out there. We will
have to do some investigating.
Well, big spoilers, but who cares at this point? We do find out that the cheese pervert is Priscilla's brother, Percy. The comeuppance that he gets at the end is that he goes to Ottawa and becomes the chair of the Dairy Commission. Yeah. So, which...
Well, because it's a whole joke of every time somebody goes to report the flashing, the police laugh.
Yeah,
because they think it's so stupid, which I'm like, that's kind of dark, that, you know, these women are getting flashed, which is obviously a horrible crime, but at the same time, the fact that the police are not taking it seriously because it's involving cheese,
and because police often don't take female concerns about sexual misconduct seriously. Maybe there's a deeper commentary in that. Often when men commit these crimes, they then face no repercussions, and then they go on to have these very illustrious powerful jobs and illustrious careers because, oh, well, you can't hold them accountable, like Brett Kavanaugh, for fuck's sake. Like, you know, you can't hold them accountable for things that they did as a child or a full-grown man.
He was boofing.
Yeah, so anyway, room for interesting commentary in here. The fact that I'm kind of just now remembering, oh, right, that was kind of thoughtful. It means that, like, it's definitely prioritizing the comedy over the depth here. And, you know, for a Fringe show like this, I think that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, exactly. It knew exactly what it was and knew where to draw lines. So, yeah.
Great.
So, what's next?
Up next, we have Minimum with Be Victorious Productions. Mac, Big Mac.
Yeah.
The Big Mac episode. Mac was the only one of the trio that saw this. So, tell us about it.
So, once again, the premise of this show is what sold me the minute I read it, which is basically the Premier of Ontario, newly elected, decides to do his job at minimum wage. And has to live off that. And I was like, what a great premise for a story about this rich politician who ultimately has to live off like $38,000 a year before tax. So I went into this really excited for the concept of that. But what I will say is, while this piece was really fun, everybody was working really well together. Like our trio of artists was Brandon James Sim, Krista Marie Awag, and Victoria Sullivan. They all worked really well together and were really fun. They had good chemistry. I will say Brendan gave me a lot of the actor Charlie Day. I don't know if you guys know who he is from Horror Bosses. Has a really kind of high voice that kind of gets really like, what's going on? Like that type of energy to him. So that was really fun watching him spiral throughout this piece as like he gets into office, some dick pics and some illicit material gets released. And so to try and save face, he does this PR campaign where he says, I will do my job at minimum wage. He gets antagonized by the PM, who he has a rival relationship with that we never see. But basically, like, he gets antagonized into doing this PR thing by the PM and Taylor Swift and people who are calling him out. And he does this type of thing. And so, ultimately, the piece kind of spirals in a way that is fun, but also kind of gets away from the original premise that sold me on the piece. Where by the end, we're getting into AI overlords and jingoistic politics and how, you know, a quarter of beer is what gets this AI overlord former staffer elected as the new premier after this premier steps down from all the scandal and his failures as a political leader. So basically, like, the premise itself is fun. The piece kind of spirals in a way that where, like, I would have loved to see this more as a political Christmas Carol story where, like, because there's moments of that where, like, he ends up having to get a roommate in Hamilton because that's the only place he can afford to live for rent, with a hole in the wall and a creepy roommate that always stares at him in his sleep. And then he has to take the transit in every day and he has to deal with that situation. Like, there are moments where I'm like, okay, if you're actually seeing these issues,
learn something from them.
Learn something and grow from this.
Gain class consciousness.
Right? Exactly. Where it's like, you could have done more with that. A concept of him actually becoming a decent premier of Ontario. But they kind of went more in the comedy route of this situation spirals bigger and bigger and bigger So ultimately, he's drinking on the job all the time. He goes from drinking Jack Daniels to drinking Listerine because he can't afford proper alcohol anymore.
And Listerine is the expensive stuff. You could buy the knockoff brand mouthwash like I do, but...
There you go. There you go. Well, they didn't go that far. That would have been funny if they did.
Yeah.
But like, the show was fun and funny at the time. But as I left, I went, wait a minute. We kind of really got away from our original premise of a premier being forced to live on minimum wage, and what does that do to you? Because that is a hard thing to do. Like, people don't realize, living on minimum wage, the way people do it is really hard. Like, at some point, they're making a joke like with like the fact like he has to give up his mansion to now go like live minimum wage, and it's like, well, can I afford a place in GTA? Not if you want like 10 roommates, or can I go out to Mississauga, Oakville, and also he ends up in Hamilton. But it's like the premise of him doing this, I was ready for a moment of him actually doing good because he's had this lived experience. But ultimately, it more was just about he ultimately ends up resigning from power because he's not paying attention. His staffer, who creates like this AI manifesto, or basically like bow down to the AI overlords, is like, what happens? And I'm like, okay, all right, but I'd rather if you just stuck with the premise of the staffer trying to help him learn his lessons and how do you actually build a better society now that you've lived the life of someone who is far less than you. But
there's no Bob Cratchit by the sound of it. That's what's missing.
Yes, well, that's what I thought this staffer was going to be. She's like, I'm a volunteer. And ultimately, the whole joke is he tries to keep selling her desk to make like $30-$40. And he's like, no, like my desk is my identity. Like I've earned this desk, and for you to give it up, you're taking something away that I have earned with the very little I have. So like that was something where like you're going somewhere, but then ultimately you detour into somewhere else. And I was like, I'd rather you just stuck on the path you were given and your premise promised me. So overall, it's a fun show. I enjoyed it in the moment, but coming away from it, you went away from your premise that I kind of wish you'd just stuck to.
Can I ask if we're good, still good for time? Jill,
Yeah.
I don't know where we're standing. It's interesting, all the things you mentioned. I talked about this a bit on that pre-Fringe live stream on Stageworthy, because the writer and co-star of this show, Victoria Sullivan, had been a guest on Stageworthy, the episode right before we did that, to talk about and promote this show. And, it sounded good and sounded funny. And I was thinking, yeah, that's like definitely on my maybe list. I knew you wanted to see it. I knew we had the option for comps if we wanted to, that if I could find a spot for it, I would put it in. And then something funny happened. And this relates to what Jill, you and I were talking about in relation to Lifeguard in the previous episode, is that in that Stageworthy interview, Victoria and Phil have like a long segment in the middle where they're both talking about AI and how terrible it is and how it's the death of art and everything. And I'm like, really? This show? Because this is the poster. We've all seen this type of art stuff, like this Simpsons. This is obviously an AI generated poster. I'm showing it to you two. I'll put it on the screen for anyone to see it bigger, but like,
and it's a fun poster. Like, it caught my eye.
But like, again, this is the same thing I was saying with Lifeguard. Like, it's the real AI for me, but not for the mentality, is that I'm going to write this show that fearmongers about AI. I'm going to go on a podcast and monologue about how bad AI is. But when it comes to designing the poster for your show, something that, as we know, Phil cares very strongly about, I'm just going to type in prompt and like, I don't know. I'm not the kind of person who will hold using AI for posters against artists. I've said my piece about this. I said it on that stream, but I do think it's really ironic that the people who are most vocal about AI bad are still visibly using it themselves. I don't know. Thoughts, Mac, as someone who saw the show and knows about the AI subplot in it?
I mean, the AI subplot in it is there, but I think it's more of a commentary on, like, she writes a book and like says like, this is what we're going to do. And he just chooses not to read it. So he's a bad politician. Then he's like, you know what? You seem to know what you're doing. I trust you, staffer. We'll go with your plan. Even though it's called like the supreme plan. Like, it's like very Nazi sounding. But he doesn't care. So he just signs off on it. And then all of a sudden people are mad at him for it. And he's like, oh, maybe I should have read this plan that is ultimately like making people unemployed and giving them just like a basic like COVID CERB paycheck that you're going to live off of. And we're just going to support AI. And so I was like, interesting thing to bring into the story, but once again, I don't know if it was necessary for the story.
Is it framing that as a happy ending, that universal basic income while AI does all the work for us?
No, not at all. It's like AI's taking jobs, people are mad about it. Like, nobody wants AI.
Even if they have a universal basic income.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So
basically, it's like you will bend to the AI power and just accept the money you are given. like, I don't know how much the money, like, they don't specify it's like enough to live on. It's just like, here's your salary, deal with it type thing. And people are mad.
Yeah, I think
So,
this play might be a little muddled by the sound of it, both from what
Yeah.
you described, Mac, from me editing a review of it for
Mhm.
Next, that seems
Yeah.
to sort of poke holes at the political compass of
Yeah.
this piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like it's losing what exactly is the deconstruction
Mhm.
of the living wage and how
Yeah.
we're compensated for our labor. Like, if it's imagining a vision of a possible
Mm-hmm.
future with universal basic income
Mhm.
and offsetting labor to AI, you'd think for someone who's so clearly, show
Mhm.
poster again, okay with using AI for certain tasks that will make their life easier, is this actually about labor? Is this actually about how much money you can live on? Is the thesis that AI is bad, you should go back to your exploitative minimum wage jobs? Like, I don't know. I didn't see the show, so I can't dig too deep into this, but something that was said in that Next review is that the final monologue makes a big emphatic speech for you should vote. That's
Yes.
the takeaway.
Yes.
And like, I think we all know that that's not going to solve these problems, especially since this is framed as like a populist politician who,
Mhm.
by campaigning on I'm going to live on minimum wage, is actually trying to be like the better option, not the lesser of two evils. So the fact that, just vote, you're the person we would vote for. You're the one who says you're going to change things and do things differently and empathize with the class struggle plight. So like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something about this seems not quite right. But again, I didn't see it.
Yeah, either
I
way.
will say there's maximum thoughts on minimum. Would you
Haha.
concur,
Haha,
Mac,
well
in
said,
your
Jill.
closing?
No, I mean, once again, the show was funny in the moment, but the more I thought about it afterwards, I just wish they'd stuck more closer to the original premise of basically almost like a Christmas Carol political story of someone who is forced to do something and then ultimately learns something beneficial from it versus the route they went, which is fun in the moment, but upon further reflection, I went, wait a minute. But either way, that's neither here nor there.
Speaking of AI and labor.
Yeah, Jill, what's next?
We, taking my transition from me, Ryan, that one, our next show is Artificially Intelligent 2.0. The company credited here is a Greek guy, Anesti Danelis. And Mac, you got the opportunity to see this for the squad, so tell us about it.
I did. Well, Ryan and I covered this last year, and so because it was
2 years ago.
Sorry, 2 years ago now. So Artificial Intelligence 2.0, I was like, oh, okay, he's back, and did he write a new piece that, is going to give me something new and different to play with? And ultimately, there was a lot of similar material. Maybe not word for word, because it's hard to remember word for word. But we did cover a lot of similar vibes. Anesti does this piece where basically he's telling his life story and he's trying to get AI to write him a musical about it or a song about it. Once again, similar things. Like I remember in the first version Ryan and I watched, he talked about how, foreign parents like to use the slipper to discipline. Well, that comes back again. The whole concept of him being bisexual and dating a male and his parents being like unclear with how to address it as Greek foreign parents who are maybe not as open to that originally, like that came back again. Like there was a lot of similar threads that came back. Whether or not it was word for word, I can't remember. But like point being is I went in hoping for something different, like a different song, a different vantage point, like a different way to play with AI and music, because that is something you can do. But I can't wait going, this feels a bit too similar for me, where I went, I'm not feeling enough of a difference. And so because of that, I came away going, it was fun. I had fun again, but I didn't come away going, wow, what a new show, even though it was marketed as 2.0. Also, I would say the theater was way too hot. Like, I get alumni turns off their AC because of the noise, but you gotta leave the AC on, people. Like, I walked into that space and it was a wall of heat and we were a sold out show. And literally, there had people on either side of me doing the rubber neck because it was just so hot that trying to stay awake was so hard in the heat. And like you when you walk back outside, and it's a summer July day, like it's not like cool, but the temp difference of walking back outside and just getting that wall of fresh air, it was like, oh my God, like it was just too hot in there. So I would just say turn the AC on, actors project. I never found their AC that loud, like when they turn it off when you're coming in. Like, but it was just way too hot in that venue. And honestly, like, if it was any hotter, I would be concerned for some people's health because it was just getting way, way too hot in there. And you're in a full theater where people cannot get in and out easily. Yeah, the heat was a major thing that was actually kind of a bit distracting from the performance.
Question for you, Mac.
Yeah.
heat stroke aside,
Yes.
because your big critique of it, and I think it's a very valid critique, is that you're marketing this as a new sequel type show, and yet it's kind of retreading too much of the ground from the previous one. Do you feel that if you hadn't seen the original one, there was a lot to enjoy in this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If you had not seen the original, you would have come away being very happy and having a lot of fun. I guess he's a very charismatic, fun performer to watch. It was just, having seen his last work, I was like, oh, wait, the slipper gag. I remember that from the last time, and I laughed really hard at it. Didn't laugh as hard this time, but it's still a funny commentary to make about parents and things like that. Ryan, I'm pretty sure he talked about the fettuccine fuckboy as like the faux song that he needs to fix. And so like that, or him keeping feta in his pocket, that was something that came back again. Like there's a lot of similar threads. I just went, having seen your other work and being impressed, I was hoping for something new or something a bit more different. But yeah, just didn't quite hit the mark there. But yeah.
Fair.
I sometimes find, Mac, so alumni theater, yes, I can attest. Unfortunately, I do feel like their AC unit is a little bit loud. And so alumni might be a cool idea to upgrade your AC maybe so that
it's a beautiful, like nice old venue.
It's
but
so nice.
AC.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lovely atrium. I like the coloring in it. It's great. But yeah, so I guess that's my question for you, Mac, too. Like, how do you think the usage of the space was? Because I've seen alumni being used various different ways, even though like on paper it's proscenium. Okay, cool.
Very sparse. Like it was really just him, the guitar, some lights, and a microphone. Like similar when the last time he was here and he was writing, he was over at not Factory. What's the one?
It was Tarragon.
Tarragon, thank you, Tarragon. Similar vibe, like very basic set, or not even set, very minimalist set.
He's got his guitar. He's got it. Did he still have the orb? The
no
embodied
orb.
AI?
No
orb.
Orb.
Okay, interesting.
This time it was just lights that flashed when it talked.
Cool.
Yeah, so like overall, like it wasn't a bad piece, but I think having seen the first version, I came away going, yeah. I wish there had maybe been something a bit more different, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Now we're moving on to Clowns Reading Shakespeare, which is a Panoply Collective production. And Ryan, you got the chance to see that for us, so tell us all about it.
Yeah. So, Clowns Reading Shakespeare, the title says it all, or does it?
Ooh.
As in, it is clowns doing Shakespeare, not a lot of reading, which is funny. They even acknowledge that at one moment in it, which I thought was funny. So we have this group of clowns that if you've seen various other Panoply clown shows before, some of these are recurring characters that you might have seen before. I had my first exposure to the Panoply clown troupe earlier this year that they actually did a fundraiser event that was basically promoting this show, and the clowns did some funny shtick. They did other kind of talent show things from other artists. And I was very charmed by the clowns in that. So I'm like, yes, I will go see this at Fringe. I like these clowns. They're really funny people. The pitch is that our stage manager is a clown named Dinky, spelled with like accents over the E, like you have to pronounce it that way. Dinky is played by Alyssa Pothier. So Dinky is the stage manager for this production where they're doing something classy and they're going to do some Shakespeare. And the director is like studied Brecht and Stanislavski. They're a real genius. The director is played by Paige Madsen. The thing is, though, the producer is coming tomorrow to see a first run through, and they haven't even done auditions yet. They haven't even picked which Shakespeare show they're doing. So, So we're kind of like set up with you, the audience, are here to audition for the show. Who wants to be in our as of yet undecided Shakespeare show? And planted in the audience, we have our silly clowns who all come up one by one, and they're here to audition for the show. So we have a funny troupe of clowns. We have Kaylin Forrester plays a clown named Hot Dog. No, not dressed like a hot dog. That's just their name. The funniest moment in the show for me actually was that because it was like, this is a kids show. It was at YPT, and there was a lot of kids in the audience. And the fourth time that Hot Dog said their own name as Hot Dog, a kid sitting in front of me said, "Hot Dog." like they just clicked in and clued in at that moment that this character's name, even though they'd said it several times already by that point. I thought that was really fun. We have Sebastian Biansucci playing a clown named Pockets, and Pockets and Hot Dog have some sort of past together. They did a Shakespeare production, I think it was Romeo and Juliet back in 2004, and it was a disaster, and they've been enemies ever since. So now getting them back into the room together, and a big climactic moment is they have to redo their 2004 choreography and blocking, and like, no, we said we never would. And like, honestly, the payoff for that wasn't as funny as all the setup would imply, but it was like still a funny recurring joke throughout. And then we have Sienna Singh playing a clown named Puff. And Puff is like very sort of like socially awkward, anxious, has like a pet rubber chicken, super funny. And Puff really wants to play Banquo and is best friends with Dinky. And Dinky had promised that you could play Banquo, even though we're not even sure if we're doing Knackers yet. They haven't picked a show. So eventually the director, played by Paige Madsen, shows up, and the director has no red nose, is not, I think, textually a clown. So it's kind of like the shtick is like, well, all these clowns came to my artful audition process and we have to do the show for my vision, but the producer's coming tomorrow and Dinky's like, come on, we need to pick a show, we need to rehearse, we need to show a run through. So they do basically little different scenes from a few different Shakespeare things. We start with Hamlet, and then we move on to R&J, and then we move on to Mackers. It's to try different things out to the point where we settle on Knackers. And while we don't have enough of a full run on such short notice to show the producer tomorrow, we could at least wow the producer with a big battle scene when Birnam Wood comes down to the castle and they get a bunch of kids from the audience to be the trees, and it's fun.
Aww.
I kind of feel like, to me, if I have a couple light critiques, because I had a great time with this show. These clowns are super funny. I was laughing. I enjoyed all their shtick. They bounce off really well together. Some light critiques, though, if I may, is that I think this might have been better if they had just at the outset picked one Shakespeare show. Maybe they could do a whole series of these clowns reading Shakespeare where it's clowns reading Hamlet, clowns reading Macbeth, clowns reading R&J. But I kind of thought that they were just trying to stuff a little too much into this one show, to the point where we start with maybe we're doing Hamlet and we get what felt like a really good climax for what could have been the climax of the whole show, that Dinky, who's been the beleaguered stage manager this whole time, auditions to be Hamlet and does a wowing to be or not to be that, like, yes, you will be our Hamlet. And it's like so exciting because, oh, me, Dinky, I'm going to be Hamlet. That could have been like a really heartfelt way to end the show. But then it's just like, nope, we're moving on now. We're doing R&J. Like, oh, which is kind of like funny as a rug pull. But it seemed like the structure was a little wonky and we're just trying to, it seemed like they had a mandate to, we have to do these 3 Shakespeare shows, when it might have been better with a little more breathing room to pace the show around one in particular. The other thing I'll say is Paige's character, the director, was very funny and I enjoyed her presence, but I think she needed to pick a lane because, like I said, she wasn't wearing the red nose. She wasn't a clown persona. She was just called the director. And she was very kooky in her own way, but also was the person who, like, come on, people, we need to preserve my vision. We need to do this thing. So I kind of think, like, either be a clown or be the straight man. And she was sort of occupying this middle zone. I was talking to a friend about this, and she said that, like, I would have liked to see, like, You're the Human in a Muppet show, and I'm surrounded by all these clowns. And we didn't really get that. She was sort of just as kooky as the rest of them. And it's fine if, like, give her the red nose, let her be a clown character too. I'm the clown director. We are all a troupe of clowns doing Shakespeare. But because there was this sort of, like, middle ground, I felt like if anything, Dinky could have or should have, and sometimes felt like they were the straight man because as the stage manager, they were trying to keep us on book. They were trying to keep it all together. But yeah, it sort of felt a little too chaotic because we lacked either the straight man or we lacked the commitment to these are all clowns. Everybody's allowed to be silly. Overall, I thought it was really fun. Lots of like really great, funny things in here. Super like accessible Shakespeare stuff for kids. One really funny moment that happened in my performance was that because it's a YPT and I think every performance is a relaxed performance, they let some latecomers into the audience, like maybe like 10, 15 minutes into the show. And Sebastian's character, Pockets, said to these people, oh, you're so far behind, you'll never catch up. Like, which is funny because usually it's like you try to be inviting to, oh, come on in. No, you haven't missed anything. And it was just like a funny reversal of that. But yeah, like I thought everyone was like really like doing funny stuff. I would watch more of this. I think I would just like to maybe see more focused versions of this premise. Make an anthology out of it.
Nice. Staying on the same realm of the Bard, we are now moving to our next production, which is My Own Private Shakespeare. And this is with Hay and Associates, Inc. Mackenzie, you saw that for us.
Well, I will say my piece is definitely not a clown show. No. By any stretch. It is a total 180 from what Ryan has described of his Shakespeare piece. This piece is, once again, this is that walking the line of therapy and theater. And Justin Hay, he's the writer and performer. And this is basically a portion of his life story where basically within 2 weeks, a 2-week time period, he gets a call on the toilet saying his dad has died in Scotland, a dad who is estranged from the family and he has to write the eulogy for. You also get the fact that his wife says she wants to separate and they end up living together in the house and her lover ends up moving in and they share children and custody and it's a whole spiral there. And he's also being told that his benign brain tumor is growing and that they need to operate on this tumor. Not do full cranial surgery, but like drop the radiation things into the brain to help get it down.
Is this Shakespeare Breaking Bad?
Kind of. Like, he is going through a lot. And so basically he is telling the story of his life. And then he weaves in naturally these moments of Shakespeare that and he does these monologues and moments. So like when he's talking about his wife and what's going on there, and the fact that, like, they said she wouldn't bring her new partner into the house, she does. And then that ties into him being Othello, doing a monologue about Desdemona. Or, he's talking about his dad, and ultimately he does like the Hamlet, Father Hamlet moments, where basically he's grappling with the fact that, like, his dad was not a great person. He was, in some points, abusive to his mother and his sisters. So we get some Lear moments in there too. He's using Shakespeare really well, and he's a natural orator of Shakespeare. He's able to just seamlessly go into these monologues that are filled with such heart and pain that he's bringing into it. It's beautifully well done. I will say he even does great with, there was a fly on stage that kept buzzing around. And like there was a line, one of the Shakespeare songs brought up a fly. And so the fly was there and he kind of just naturally buzzed it away. It was perfect. Like, he just naturally flew with it. I came away going, wow. Like, first of all, kudos to this man for continuing on in life when he got thrown all these really hard situations to deal with. And he talked about the one scene that was like, he was in the brain surgery and he was awake during it. Like, he wasn't completely unconscious, because it wasn't like open brain surgery. It was like they had local anesthetic and then like drilled in and then like dropped the pellets in. But like, he started reciting Shakespeare, and the doctor afterwards said, like, the entire room, like, your heart rate went down, but also he said everybody else, like all the other surgeons in the room, calmed as well. I will say the ending's a bit abrupt, where I would have loved a bit more resolution to that story, because like he talks about how, like, basically, like, he does the surgery and then he's having dinner with friends, and all of a sudden he goes into like a seizure because like there's an issue with the surgery, and he ends up, and his daughter end up moving back in with his wife, who lives like an hour or so away, but he can't drive to get there. And he makes a comment of like, my kids never lived with me again, because basically they went off to college or university. And so he lost that time with them because he just couldn't travel to see it, because the wife wouldn't drive up to see him. There was a lot of some unresolved threads. I would be like, so where are you at with your daughters now? Like, where's that story? Like, he did a very good job of resolving the issues with his dad, and acknowledging that his dad was kind of a dick, or was a dick. Like, he brings up, like, one of the last convos he had with his dad was they were drinking whiskey, and the dad reveals that, after 5 miscarriages with his mom, the dad, who's a pastor, ends up, impregnating another woman, has a daughter. So he never knew he had a sister, who died at 3 years old because she drowns. So he's like, within a 10-minute conversation, I had a sister and I lost a sister. So like, he goes through a lot in this piece, but he's able to resolve the stories. But there's a few minor threads that weren't fully resolved. Like, his own personal story resolved. He's in a better place now, as he says. There's a few other threads that he left unresolved, and maybe that's because they're unresolved in his life. I don't know. But like, it ends a bit abruptly for me, where I would have done a bit more of a final pull the threads together. But like, overall, it was a terrific one-man show piece that I came away going, wow. Like, I'm sure Justin has joy in his life, but obviously we were diving into some of the more darker, sad moments of his life. And he's able to still come through that with heart and humanity, and not be a depressed alcoholic, like totally broken person by it. But it's because of his love of Shakespeare and the way he's used Shakespeare as a coping mechanism to help him through this. He talked about listening to the Laurence Olivier recordings on a vinyl as a child, and just, he didn't understand everything Laurence Olivier was saying, but he was able to connect with the emotion and the story that was there, and use that as a grounding point throughout his whole life. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful, well-told story.
I will say Justin actually came to see Such Ado and was flyering for
Shakespeare adjacent.
I was in the audience at the end, just saying hi to friends and patrons, and came up to me and he was like, oh my gosh, that show was so incredible. Like, this is my own show. If you get a chance to come see it, I'd love to have you come out. So I didn't know the whole premise of the show, and it was just like a lovely human, like,
he is a lovely human being.
When you just can pick that out of someone, right? Just from their first introduction. So I love that the show is his journey like that. Yeah.
I would say they walked that really great line of, he could have taken himself out and just been anybody, and the story would have been just as compelling. It never felt like the therapy session. Like, he's talking a lot about himself, but he did it in a way that I never felt bogged down by that. So yeah, and overall, it was a very well done solo show, and it's very natural. Like, it's just a throne on stage that he sometimes uses, sometimes doesn't. And he's in business casual. He's not in a costume like in the poster, where he's like dressed up as like Banquo stabbed, or sorry, Mackers. I guess it'd be Mackers, but like he's not dressed up in that way. Like he's just got in a business casual, walking out on stage doing Shakespeare, telling you a section of his life story. So
great.
Yeah, things can be that simple.
Love
Exactly.
that. Love to hear it.
Yeah.
All right, still staying in the realm of the bard, we're moving on to 1920s Walking Around in a Dream. And this is with Unspoken Theatre Company. Both Ryan and Mackenzie, you saw this iteration of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Tell us all about it. I heard little sprinklings about this.
Ryan, I know you've got some fun stuff on it, so you go first.
I'll get us started. Once again, I saw this one in the first day of Fringe, so if I'm rough on details, because we're doing this weeks later, feel free to chime in, Mac, and correct me. It is a jazz age 1920s adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It is by the same company, Unspoken Theatre, that did #1 clown show with Victor and Priscilla last year that Jill, you and I both saw. That was really fun. That's why I wanted to see this, because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember having a good time with that show. This also looked like it had a bit of a clowny vibe. It's written by Natalie Kay, who was one of the 3 credited writers of that previous show. So I'm like, cool, yes, let's check this out. I like Midsummer. I just saw one of the best productions of Midsummer I've ever seen. That's currently at the Stratford Festival. Everybody go down to see that. It's pretty damn great. So I'm like, okay. Cool. I'm high on the Midsummer, let's go vibe. A play that I'm usually kind of sick of. I feel like we've done it too many times. There's very little you could still do with it. Stratford proved me wrong, so now I'm back on this horse,
good job, Stratford.
this ass. So 1920s themed. What's kind of interesting about this is we just focus on the lovers plot line.
Yes.
That there's no mechanicals. There's no fairies even, and you might be thinking of like, these things feel like they should intersect. How can you just like remove one element? They have like it was like some sort of like special love serum that they hear about on the radio. What was it?
It's like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like what they use in Moulin Rouge, like that green drug.
Absinthe?
Yes. It's kind of like an absinthe.
Okay, I did not.
Well, I can't remember if it was actually called absinthe. Once again, we're now post-Fringe. I'm trying to remember all the details. But it's like an absinthe, basically, where you take it in, it kind of temporarily puts you in a stupid or like drug-induced state where you're maybe not of all your faculties.
So that's what allows us to do a version of Midsummer that still keeps the lovers and entanglements without the fairies, that we have some sort of love substance that gets people mix and match. We have our classic Theseus and Hippolyta set up here.
I was about to say, they kept them.
Because in order to do the lovers, that is both part of the setting up and resolution of the conflict. But yeah, we have Egg is the Aegeus character here, is Hermie, not Hermia, but Hermie's father, who objects to her coupling with Andy, not Lysander, and thinks that she should be with Dimitri. And Dimitri is a boxer who's all mixed up in this, gonna throw a fight sort of competition because of the 20s and everything scandalous. And then, of course, we have our Helena character, Helen, who goes after Dimitri, who wants to be with Hermia. You know the plot of Midsummer. It's basically that. But yeah, no mechanicals, no Bottom, no Oberon and Titania. Yeah, we're really they did get this down to like 60 minutes. So like,
I was impressed by that.
This is what you have to do if you want to get a whole Shakespeare play into a Fringe-friendly hour. Because Jill Such Ado was like an hour and a half, right?
It was an hour and a half. It was a 90-minute one.
Yeah, which still cut out a lot because Shakespeare plays 5 acts famously long. But this one knew exactly what it wanted to focus on, just which part you can excise and how to do that elegantly. I will say it was a bit of a weird slog, feels like maybe too harsh a word for it, but I also saw this. It was my first day of Fringe. It was the 4th show at the end of the first day. Maybe I didn't have the stamina for it. And stamina is required for this because the big kind of hook for it is just that they are talking in like the most
1920s fast-paced.
The most opaque, fast-paced 20s slang. And this is actually something that I liked a lot about #1 clown comedy with Victor and Priscilla, was that language was very important to that. At the time, I had interviewed the 3 playwrights for Victor and Priscilla for a piece that I wrote about clowns at Fringe for intermission. And they really talked about how like the reason why clown shows, which typically don't have separate playwrights from the performers, is like, well, this is a clown show that's really about the language and the finessing. And they did a lot in that one, Victorian slang and Polari as like the queer stealth Victorian dialect that allowed queer folks in the Victorian era to communicate undetected by the rest of society. And there was a lot of stuff about boxing in both that play and this play, and pugilist slang was a big part of So these are writers who are very interested in fast talk slang, the sort of impenetrability of language. And the big thought that I had about this show while watching it that kind of was like a aha moment for me is that the 1920s is literally 100 years ago. Like for us, we are in the 20s now. And the way these people are talking could be just as foreign to our contemporary ears as things written 400 years ago, i.e. Shakespeare. And I kind of, as I was watching it, like that was like my one, oh, I get it. Like that is what this play is doing that's interesting. It is rewriting Shakespeare, but not into contemporary speech, not into like the classic, she's the man, 10 things I hate about you, even such ado to a lesser extent, because they preserved a lot of the Shakespearean text as we talked about in part 2. But it's rewriting into a whole new language that is temporally removed and therefore foreign to us. And I thought that was kind of fun. And like, it takes a while to really like grasp with the cadences. Like I said, maybe I didn't have the stamina to fully follow along, but over time, kind of like reading A Clockwork Orange, you sort of get the language. You don't need to keep flipping back to the glossary. You're able to follow along. And I thought that was really neat. And that's the one thing about this that I thought really made it like, oh yeah, that's clever. I like what they're doing here. But how about you, Mac? What do you think?
Yeah, how did you feel?
I mean, I enjoyed the piece. It wasn't my favorite musical of the festival.
Oh yeah, it was technically a musical. I kind of forgot.
It is a musical. The songs are fun. I didn't come away humming any. Like I didn't come away going like, wow, that song was it, you know. But like in the moment, I was enjoying it. I was enjoying watching to see how they adapted the piece. The minute I clocked that they weren't going to do the fairies or the Mirv mechanicals, I went, okay, all right, I can see that we're going to avoid some of the bigger issues of trying to adapt Midsummer for a modern setting that maybe wouldn't quite work. The dialogue, I love the fact they did proper 1920s slang and like they had like a Moira Rose lexicon of words to make sure they were right on point with how to phrase things. All the couples were fun. Shout out to our Demetrius.
Demetrius played by Tony Ray.
Yeah, like he played like a perfect kind of Sylvester Stallone, like
the boxer guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was a lot of fun to play with and watch him hang out and do that. That was great. Jill, I think you would be a great fit for this show if they ever did auditions for it. Like it has a very Jill energy about it that I'm like,
oh, I love that.
Right? It's schlinky.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very schlinky. Yes, good word, Ryan. Good word.
It's Jill's word.
True, Jill's word. But yeah, like I would just say like this was such a fun piece. Yeah, it was the whole way they kind of had to get some drug into it to make the lover thing work. A bit clunky, yes, because it's like, okay, how do you get out of it without the fairies? And like it kind of gets punched and knocked out, but then that kind of resolves it really fast. And the stakes of that of Helen and Hermia or whatever, Hermie, their conflict of like, because like that's one of the great moments of that play is when all 4 lovers are on stage, and it's like the she's short but she's gonna rip my eyes out type thing. Like I was waiting for that type of 4-way like Your Fault kind of musical number where like everybody's kind of jumping on each other like like it's one of those things of where you could really kind of get some action into that moment of you got the 2 guys trying to box each other. Like, the women dodging around. Like, I felt there was maybe a missing number there where you could have had a bit more fun with the whole thing of the 2 guys in a drug-induced state fawning over Helen and Hermie getting mad at this and warring with the women. Like, I feel like that maybe could have been a bit more dynamic than what it was. If I kind of felt a bit, okay, it was fun, but didn't quite punch the way I wanted it. I'm like, aha, thank you. I love that scene in the play where it's the 4 lovers really going at it with each other. And that's where if it's a well-directed production, because if that scene really soars and moves, it's laughing and it's fearful at times and it's well blocked. It's like that scene can really make or break a Midsummer production. And this scene was okay. It didn't wow me. It didn't blow me away. It sounds like maybe that scene in the Stratford production.
Go to Stratford. Everything's perfect in that production, in my opinion.
We will.
5 ends.
Yeah. I feel like maybe you could have included some version of like the room mechanicals being like the people who run the speakeasy and they're trying to do something for...
not in an hour, you can't.
Sure, not in an hour, yeah. Which I'm like, why not make this play 90 minutes? Like, give them the extra 30. They deserve it.
Because I had a 4-show day and I was tired, that's why.
This was like the 3rd show of the day in that venue, and I was like, I still would give them another 30 minutes just to be like generous and flesh it out just even a bit further. But overall,
outside of Fringe, definitely. Yeah. Like if this does get, like
Stratford,
needs to sustain
pick this piece up and bring it to the studio theater. This would sell well in the studio theater at Stratford as an alternative, a counter program to like a Shakespeare play. I could definitely see it having life there. Yeah.
Perfect. So picking up the punches, of this.
Aha!
We are now moving on to talking about the Astros, which is Sheep's Clothing Theater and Metamorphosis Theater Company that Ryan and I got a chance to see, and I'm very excited about this one.
Another sports show, which you hinted at.
Sports shows in Fringe. Let's go! I was so happy that the sports shows, I will say mine included, slapped in Fringe. Like, FIFA's going around Toronto. Maybe that's like infusing a little bit of that like extra zaniness, but this show, friends, I think as I percolated on everything that I got a chance to see, it's up there as my favorite, the Astros.
That's definitely up there for me too.
Multiple reasons, and I would love to give a little synopsis and kind of dive in.
Go ahead.
Ryan, if you don't mind.
No, by all means.
I'll lace up the skates. So, little back lore, a little bit. Baby Jill grew up basically in an arena. My brother's 10 years older than I am, and so when I was born, I was shuttled around arena to arena while my brother played travel hockey. So there was a lot of nostalgia in this piece and a lot of the toxicity that comes with, and the fact that most of our cast are femme presenting and we do have the opposing team member is male. Loved that dramaturgy choice because it also elevated and spun a lot of things on the head. So essentially the Astros is in the locker room of a hockey team. They are a high school hockey team and they're coming to the end of their season. And instantly you get a peek into who all of these individual players are. One is the captain. One is the one that's normally benched, but super smart strategist. One is the one that's wanting to do it for dad and the loved one. One is the like kind of weird, odd goalie figure, and one is the new rookie. So we get like super in-depth character building for all of these players right off the top. And then as the story goes on and we see the game go on that they're playing, and we know that they're at the end of their season, you start to see the cracks in all of these characters. Some of them, it's their seniors, so it's their last season, and they are facing the real question that happens with a lot of hockey players is your career ends. Where do you go? What do you do next? What is the world for you? And that I also grew up going to a high school that billeted a lot of like the OHL players. And those were a lot of questions that were going around in the hallways of like, if you're not drafted, what's next for you? Do you have school? Do you have trust fund babyness? Like, where do you go? So there was that existential dread that a lot of these in real life, because these actors were depicting a male team, even though they themselves as actors don't present as such. But something like that existential dread of, bro, the hockey season's ending. What now? What do I do? The sort of trying to like be there for your buddy, but not knowing how to emotionally connect, that was present in all of this. The toxic masculinity of let's just use profanity and our fists to kind of solve an issue. So all of these basically common, unfortunately, tropes that are in every locker room underneath. It's not just the coach coming in to say, this is the play we're doing, or make sure you grab your Gatorades, boys. These are real life men that our actors are portraying going through or trying to wade through real life situations that are either happening now or going to happen. And the way that the piece kind of centers around this sort of like micro moment in all of these players' lives, it ends in a way that is absolutely brilliant, where it's almost like you see the stage is like split screen and you see Tyler, who is our rookie, sort of narrate to the audience like, hey, I made it. And I said I was going to like call the boys and keep in touch and be friends with everyone. But life goes on and I didn't, or I didn't know how. So there was connections and promises that these players make, and then those dissolve. And so we see that mirrored with Scott, who's played by Emma Kusakrea, who, Emma, I'm saying it right now on the pod, I want to work with you. I want to cast you in everything that I do. I think you are absolutely phenomenal. And Emma is still doing training in TMU, which I'm going to get to in a second. This is the closest I've seen a Canadian actor going there. Going guttural, going gross, going disgusting, going visceral. That we see a lot happen on national theater stages. We see a lot happen on Broadway We don't see a lot happen on Canadian stages sometimes. And Emma, you went there. So shout out to Emma. But Scott plays the character who is like the fighter, who is like, I might not be the best on the team, but I can throw a punch. And
they're the goon.
We see a very dark side of Scott. Scott is representing a lot of the badness that centers around like up and coming professional sports in a sense of like the mental health is so spirally, and if you don't keep an eye on these players, like there's a scene that Emma like has like a knife and you don't know what's going to happen. Like, are they going to hurt themselves? Are they going to hurt team members? Are they going to just hurt their legacy that they've tried to build? And I think Emma Scott encapsulates all of that, and having that sort of partner with Tyler's monologue of like, I didn't go back and talk to the boys and I'm professional now, seeing this character who didn't make it and sort of the stabbings and the aggression that they have to just bear with themselves. That mirror at the end was so good. And I just want to touch, sorry, Ryan, I'm spitballing here.
Please.
I'm skating around the ice here.
I'm agreeing with everything you're saying.
Most of this cast are TMU students. And I want to say again, I've obviously lifted Emma, but every one of you are absolutely freaking brilliant. Toronto, like if these are the actors that we have coming up to tread the boards, some of them are seniors, I believe. Some of them are in like third year. We are in for a treat. So thank you folks for doing that. Ryan, take the mic here.
I completely agree with everything you're saying. I said a blurb about this in a recent column where I was like reflecting on Fringe stuff. This show manages to be both an exceptional ensemble piece where everybody shines and a star vehicle for Emma, which is, it's rare to see something that is able to be both. Usually if it feels like a star vehicle, other people get short shrifted, but I left this show feeling like I know every one of these characters so well. Yeah. And like even like a character who maybe doesn't have as much going on, like Jeff, for example, played by Sam Dominguez. I look at that character, I'm like, I think that's me. If I were on this team, that's who I would be. So like, it's just kind of so funny. Like everybody is well developed, even if it seems like proportionately they have less going on than others. I will say the script is written by Brianna Russell. It is directed by Katie Thorne. The two of them are the leads of Sheep's Clothing Theater, who is one of the two companies producing this. Sheep's Clothing is like super on the up and up right now. Like literally while we are recording this, they are doing a Hamilton Fringe show at the same time. I'm not certain if that'll still be ongoing when we release this episode, but right now they went straight from a completely different show, Toronto Fringe to Hamilton Fringe. And right after that, they're doing Summer Works in a co-production with Outside the March. Like this is a company to watch. They also just did a completely different show at the Theater Center a few months ago. These are hungry artists who are giving it their all, putting it in there. And kind of like the characters in the show, I think when you're like a young artist, putting everything you have into what you create, it's I don't know if I'm going to get to do this forever. Like this might just be my one shot to prove myself to like really, and regardless of whether or not there are robust careers, I hope for the whole cast, for the playwright, for the director, that this is the start of something huge for them. But maybe it's not, and like what an impression you're making to be the best skater on the ice, to be the best, to just have like one summer season of theater where you just dominated every festival and did some of the best work you could imagine. Like, stunning.
I gotta get back to the locker room and talk about the theatrical elements of this too, because it absolutely popped off from using every facet. It was at the Michael Young, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
If the space alone was so juicy. Like all it was upstage. There was a door that looked exactly like a blue painted arena door that the players were entering and exiting from the rink into what we were seeing was the locker space. And then it just had some benches. A locker room is sparse. There's not much there. They did the trick there. The logo of Astros was sort of spotlit in the center of the locker room, but it also sort of gave that same paying homage to the center of an ice rink. You have your team's logo too. So I was like, chef's freaking kiss. And then also all the actors knew how to put on their hockey equipment, knew how to package it up. They had their little like Gatorade bottles. They were like glugging those down like an athlete does. And I want to say a really fun costume note, because mostly they're in their jerseys. Their shoes are like painted black Converse with laces that endow the skates. Like
without
there's no blade, but like when they tie them on and them walking on those shoes, it's like they were endowing skates. And I was like, this is so cool. Like So cool. My audience also was packed to the brim of, I could just sense it wasn't just theater goers. It's people that probably loved Heated Rivalry because that's hot on the tongue. It's people that are probably sports goers too. So I just really love that this like sports in theater are bringing different folks into the seats. And the writing was spectacular. I think, like Ryan said, you pretty much know these characters right off the hop. But each of them have such like granular arcs that you sort of unpack and know further and further about too. So I was on the edge of my seat of knowing like, yeah, I kind of want to know like, what are your journeys, boys? Like, who is going to get drafted? Like, who is going to fall right into dad's company? Who is going to have to like totally pivot and maybe not be living the dream? Yeah, it was
and the thing about that I love about it is that they already know the answers to those questions. They have gotten to the point where, like, yes, we know Tyler is moving on to continue his hockey journey. We know that Eddie is going to, like, ref school, I think it was. We know that Scott and Paul and, like, they're just, like, they're done. And Vince is, like, going on to, like, work in his dad's business and he has, like, a relationship. What's so tragic about it is that I said a version of this in the review I wrote for Dance Nation that was just at Coal Mine collaboration with Outside the March, which they're also collaborators with for their Summerworks show. But I said, like, what's so kind of interesting about it is that to these characters, competitive dance is both the most and least important thing in the world. Yeah. And that's how I feel watching this show about hockey is like, to them, this has been their whole lives. This is everything they've been doing. It's so important. And in a blink of an eye, it's going to be gone. And they know it. And that's what is able to lead Scott to the destructive ending that we see here. Like, what am I without hockey? What is my life going to be? And I think for, like, I didn't grow up in hockey culture. None of my siblings were into hockey. I certainly wasn't. I'm not going to try to do the thing where I compare it to, like, theater, but there is something, like, really, like, sad and tragic about this type of person who works so hard to be the best at the thing they do, isn't quite the best. One of their close friends is told, you're the best of us. You will move on. None of the rest of you will. Good luck with the rest of your life. And the rest of their life is gonna be sad, maybe even in jail if the ending is going where I think it's going. Anyway.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack, so much to talk about this. This absolutely needs to be on the boards again. But that is the Astros. And as I say, we are almost at the end of our episode, folks. We have one last show to chit-chat about before we wrap up the entirety of Toronto Fringe 2026.
I didn't see this show, but is it also about a locker room, perhaps?
Yes, particularly the shower portion of the locker room. Yes, this is Gratitude with Hyperallergenic Productions. Mac, you and I got to see this. Do you want to give the synopsis, or shall I?
Jill, I will defer to you on this one, just because, trigger warning, there is very sexual heavy materials in here, and I feel, Jill, you may handle it more gracefully than I, and I feel that is a good thing in this situation. So I'll let you summarize.
Yes, I will do my best. I will come out of the gate and saying, and I think on purpose, the show is very messy and very messy. I mean, there's lots of layers and like everyone is a hero and everyone is a villain at the same time. It's spinning locker room bullying, sexual assault, spinning all of that in a very sort of new, but unfortunately probably realistic lens in so many ways. I have some qualms with some of the casting of the show that I'll get to at the end, but just off the hop, this show is called Gratitude. It is a four-hander. It is basically a power dynamic of sexual desire and lust and identity in high school aged teenagers. We have a female student by the name of Daria, and then we have Drew, who is sort of like popular boy in school, and Drew has a friend Ben, who is like fellow jock boy, and then Josh, who's also friends with Drew, but Josh is kind of like the nerdy know-it-all guy in class.
Yes.
And all of the scenes happen in this sort of locker room space where Daria...
Shower room.
Yes, the shower room of the lockers. And Daria is in love with Drew. I'm just going to spitball all of this. Sure. So Daria is in love with Drew, like an infatuated high school crush.
Yep.
Drew is dating a girlfriend right now. Daria doesn't seem to care about that. Daria wants Drew in every shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
Drew is hesitant. He doesn't want to physically, sexually cheat on his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So Daria is like desperate, really, really, really wants his attention, wants him. And she says she'll do whatever that he asks of her. So he says, okay, anything. So then he gets Ben and Josh.
You'll have my gratitude is what he says.
Exactly. You'll have my gratitude. He gets Ben and Josh to meet her in the shower room. And she basically, I'm doing a very scaled synopsis, but gets Ben and Josh off. That's what Drew sort of like questioned.
Not supposed to be together separately, but they end up having the same appointment time.
Yes. The intimacy coordination of this was brilliant because there's a lot of simulation happening on stage. Daria simulates hand jobs to both these boys on stage. Again, I'm kind of spoiling as I synopsize, but Drew may not be straight because Drew has a whole scene where he basically forces to give a blowjob to Ben. Josh and Daria have sex behind a shower curtain, and Josh is sort of like enticed by Daria. Just like I said, it is a messy sort of like the initial quest is Daria doing whatever Drew wants. Drew quests her to get her friends off. You find that Josh actually genuinely likes Daria, and I believe Daria genuinely likes Josh, but things are so messy and stringy that where do they go
She's in an
from
arranged
here?
marriage.
So that's a separate thing I'll get to in a second. Ben is sort of caught in between Jock, like I'm just kind of going with the punches. So he's assaulted by Drew. He is like felt up by Daria. And then Drew is a whole other thing as well, like has set all of this up and instantly regrets it, tests the waters with Ben, and then contorts and blames Daria for a lot of things. But Daria, alongside all of this too, has like manipulative sort of stringy ways. So this whole show you're watching, and it's clever in a sense of like, everybody is their own culprit in a sense. There's certain moments where I'm like, wow, that character was the victim. And I feel very bad with what I just watched. But then the next scene, you would see that character play the villain or be in a villainous state. And so you constantly went back and forth with like remorse for some chunks of the character, but then wanting revenge from other chunks of the character. And the script is quite dense too. Like the conversations that these characters would have with each other are, you know,
very doubt-esque, Shanley heavy dialogue.
Yeah. So like Mac was saying, Daria is in an arranged marriage with a boy who is, or a man, I should say,
in college,
much older to her.
She's in high school.
She's in high school. That kind of is noted off the top. That's kind of like the synopsis. I gave my general appraisal of the intimacy and the characters. Before I toss it to you, Mac, my qualm, and I've chatted about this with some of my friends of color as well. I had issues with how they sort of handled the culture in this piece because they mention that she's in an arranged marriage, which I feel is fine. And that's obviously adding external pressure to the character of Daria. But then we don't really hear that her fiance is a terrible person. Like, obviously, he's much older and, like, that could cause an issue. But at the end, we instantly, like, he's targeted. Like, he basically, like, Daria says that he's going to shoot Josh. Like, literally take a gun.
Yeah. That's what like a third, like, over.
And I was like, that's kind of coming out of nowhere. Like, we didn't really build that part of that character. And I think it just had me percolating a little bit, too, on, like,
the ending.
Yes, I think the script is good about volleying, like I said, victim and villain with all these characters. But when you are going to bake in a cultural plot point for the only female character on stage, just to then have like the situations that are surrounding her involve the utmost violence, that didn't sit well with me after I kind of like marinated on it. And I don't think it's something that necessarily needs to be changed in the script. I actually think the antidote could just be diversifying who you cast in this production as well. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing anybody play any of these characters. And I don't even say like from a cultural point of view, but also obviously you'd have to tweak a little bit, but like maybe from a gender point of view as well. Maybe there's an argument too of like the representation we did on stage can kind of like, there could be a counter argument of this of like, what does it mean when that is kind of like the target that's at the end of the piece? But yeah, that was kind of my whole kit and caboodle of gratitude. Again, I thought the intimacy was phenomenal. The use of space was great. The acting was incredible. Like some of the things these people have to say and they have to do to each other, like the cast was super with each other. Mac, what'd you think?
Yeah, so this was easily in my top 5 of Fringe this year. It is a heavy, disturbing piece where the sexual content is handled very tastefully. It never felt exploitative for any character. Where you usually could have gone in a very different route where it does feel sexually exploitative, but because these are all high school students, they didn't go the Euphoria route. Where I was watching Euphoria in the first bit, I was like, why are we sexualizing these characters in this way? Like, just make them college students at that point. Go with like whatever that other recent college sex show was that was on Hulu that everybody was raving about. I know. Anyway, point being, there's another show
Off Campus?
No. Tell Me Lies.
Oh, Tell Me Lies. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. which I'm like, that also is a very sexual show, but they were smart enough to set it in college, where it was like, okay, yeah, you're sexualized, but these are all of age people that are doing duplicitous sexual things to each other. The fact that this was in high school, they did a very smart job of not overly sexualizing to the point of uncomfortability for the audience, where it's like, why am I watching this? This feels icky. It does feel icky watching it, but it was done in a very tasteful way where it didn't turn me off the show completely. Now, the director and the writer was in the audience when I was there, and he had friends with him.
The writer's name is Oren Safdie.
Yes, Oren Safdie, thank you.
And it looks like it was co-directed with Fatima Lopez.
Yes. So Oren was there, and now I wasn't in the conversation. I was just walking up, but I did hear a snippet of their conversation. He did mention the show originally was like an hour and 20 minutes, and they got it down to 50 minutes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that means they cut about a little over 20 minutes of material. And when the person asked, like, what was cut, he said, the smaller things that maybe would have fleshed the story a bit more. And I think that's where I think maybe they maybe lost a bit of what Daria's arranged marriage was, because they still addressed it where it's like, hey, arranged marriage, but the guy's a bit of a gangster. Like the fact that like he's got a mob of people after Josh who are going to shoot him and kill him. Clearly,
yeah, but like we don't know that until like cleared to the end.
Well, no, we get about halfway through, basically right after the initial threesome scene. The next moment is Daria was talking with her college boyfriend. She got a little drunk and she mentions this happened, and Josh is the first name she blurts out. And so basically she's now like, hey, you're in danger. You got to transfer schools. And then from there, then escalates to even further to, we're both going to run away to Toronto. And then from there, she ends up getting killed. Now, the ending was very abrupt where I was like, wow, okay, we got right to Daria's death off stage. But she's burned alive, basically, is what happens. Or shot and then burned. Like, very graphic.
I didn't even get that. Sorry.
You didn't get that she was shot and burned, or you didn't get that she died?
I got that she was like waiting at the edge of the road, Mac, but then
she's waiting at the edge of the road, but Josh says like, I lost the address, and then they talk about her dying. Where it's the end of the play where it's like she's died. There was a break-in at the main office. Yeah,
this kind of feels like gray spaces where we were disagreeing about what we thought happened, and maybe there's a version of the script that could clarify some of these things.
Yeah. Point being is it escalates very quickly at the end, and then like at some point, like part of one of my issues was some of the blocking was on the ground, and I was up in the top row, but I still couldn't quite see what was happening on the ground. Yeah. So there's a moment at the end where Ben pushes Josh, who claims that he has a photo of the blowjob scene. And Ben, out of frustration, pushes Josh on the ground, and then Josh is on the ground saying, I can't move. So I don't know like how he fell, and if he's paralyzed. I don't know, because the blocking was a bit covered. Messy, thank you. Mm-hmm. So I would have loved maybe a bit of a restaging there to clarify that a bit. But like, this piece was so well done. Like, even the choice of opera music as the interlude music just heightened the piece, where it's like you felt this was a very dramatic, operatic, big show. Like, it was big, it was sweeping, but at the same time it was very intimate. And this piece was so well done. Like, it felt like a much darker episode of Degrassi, where like, because unfortunately in high school, no, I'm not saying this exactly happens, but there are situations where like things happen at parties between men and women, boys and girls, boys and boys, girls and girls, where like people do push sexual boundaries, and you know, only upon hindsight do we go, oh, maybe that wasn't quite right. Now in this, Drew knows what he's doing to Ben is wrong, and he's actively egging him on into the blowjob moment. But I also the fact that Daria, it wasn't the entire time of Daria being a victim, where she was like, no, I don't want to do this. Don't make me do this. You know, whether or not she is legitimately wanting it or doing it because of Drew, very gray, which is great. But what she says anyway in the play is, I'm not a victim. I wanted to do this for you for gratitude.
Yeah.
And then ultimately she then spins it and says, but I can also claim rape if you don't, you know, bend to my will, Drew. And there's a moment where she screams in the locker room. Iman's scream was spine chilling. Like my shoulders really went up when she did the scream to imply that if she screams loud enough, people will come into the locker room. She'll say that Drew raped me, and then I was assaulted by his two friends, Josh and Ben. Yeah. She's willing to play the game for what she wants. Like, she's not a simple victimized female character where this could have gone that way, and it probably would have been a different play, would have been okay if they wanted to go that way. But the fact they made Daria have more agency and energy to her, that she was just as powerful as the men and the way she could actively manipulate and control situations.
To partner that, Mac, it also leverages the fact that like rape and sexual assault happens to boys too.
Yes,
and so like
exactly.
The fact that leveraging that Daria's character in that way, it allowed us to see the sort of fumbling, I actually don't know, and there is no message for me to speak out, that Ben was possibly feeling post altercations with Drew. And then also just like the extent in which Daria sort of pushes the envelope with both Drew and Josh. Both of those boys, in my opinion, what we see. But no, I'm saying with Drew and Josh.
Oh, yeah,
too.
true.
She places herself on them, and some to the point where Drew actually didn't really want to do anything at the beginning. Like I said, it's messy in a sense of I think it's bringing to light that assault is assault, however you identify, like, and it's teetering that boundary. And all of these characters have very deep-seated secrets that some of them we do get to hear about and feel about in the piece, like Daria's arranged marriage, Drew's sexuality, possibly. You get that inkling that there's all of that boiling underneath.
And I mean, I will say the cast is terrific. Like, everybody was really great. I think this piece is open to casting whoever you want to cast. I do think it needs to be 3 men and a woman, just because I feel like the power dynamics of men and women is such an important thing that I think if you changed one of the men to a female, it would really mess with the chemistry that this play has. But I think the race of all 4 characters can be played with, that you don't quite need it to be one way or the other way. And I will say all of them are just, Isaac has been playing that kind of dumb jock that then gets drawn in too much, and you felt his uncomfortability was great. Quinlan's like love blindness for Daria is incredible.
There was a tick. There was like a tick that Quinlan kept doing, and it's like with not his hands, looking directly. I was like, ooh, that was good.
Like the moment where he's trying to say we're going to run away, and my uncle's not going to ask questions. Like the desperation he had in that, and the way he was spiraling in this, and then Tyrannus Drew, just his manipulation, but also the layers of this, where it all starts with a cheat sheet, basically. Like that's what this whole play starts with the simple thing of he needs to cheat on a test, and Drew even says like, I've been held back twice. He is age-wise more mature than these other characters, but he's held back, and he feels that insecurity of that, where he's like, people say, I'm smart in other ways, but he goes, no, I'm just dumb. Like, I smoke too much pot, I'm dumb. But like the fact that this all starts from a simple thing of Daria giving him a cheat sheet for a test, and then just simply saying, you have my gratitude. And then that spirals into this bigger situation. It just shows how the ripples of one moment can really blow out and create bigger waves that create more problems. So
all in all, we can say we were grateful to see such a mishmash,
just like I would love to see brought back. And given the full hour and a half treatment that originally the play was.
And I'm grateful to have heard you two talk about it, because I sadly missed it. But hopefully it will come back.
I could see it programmed. Soul Pepper would be a great place to program this in the regular season. This would fit their mold of shows that they're doing. So overall, terrific.
All right, so that's it. And that concludes the Cup coverage of Toronto Fringe.
We did it.
26.
Ron, how many shows is this year?
Part 1 was 16, part 2 was 15, part 3 was 13. Quick math, who can do that?
15, 16 to, 1, 3, 4. 44.
44. Wow, okay.
Woo!
Ooh, that might be a new record.
Is that a record? Is this our new record?
I don't remember what we did last year. I don't know if that's a record. I need to compare what we've done in previous years, but damn, that's a lot of shows. Good job, us.
Good job,
Yeah.
us.
We did it.
And,
Go team.
and getting this in 3 parts, too.
Yes.
We didn't need to go into a 4th part, thank God.
So before we raise our final glasses on the Cup coverage, this is, again, the 3rd installment of the Roundup series. And
5th annual.
5th annual, correct? Yeah, a lot of sports, a lot of religion, a lot of AI,
Lots of
a lot of
Shakespeare.
adaptations, a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of comedy shows too.
So
that
much
we
improv.
didn't cover.
Yeah,
cover
heavy on the
as
comedy
much
this year.
improv.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a great little mashup. Fun to be here and do all the things during Fringe. It's Christmas for us here at Cup. Keep going out there and supporting as this episode goes out. It's the end of summer season, so catch last minute summer stock. Some companies are doing full-fledged productions right now too, so get out and see that. And then, grease your wheels for the start of the fall season coming up.
Our fall season's already starting to pack it up.
Exactly.
So stay tuned.
So yeah.
And episode
love
300.
To be here.
Episode 300 is
episode
coming up
300
soon.
is coming up. Indeed.
Yeah.
In a few
But
episodes.
let's raise our beverage of choice, friends. We'll do a last cheers on Toronto Fringe 2026. Thank you, everyone, for being phenomenal artists. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay well.
Jill?
Yes.
Where can people find and follow you, though, with all your fun artists?
So, yes, folks can find and follow me at Jillian.Robinson96. I've got some sort of other hat projects. Yeah, looking forward to doing more acting and singing down the way. But, Mac, where can friends find and follow you?
Find and follow me at Mackenzie Horner on all social media platforms. Follow my musical theater antics over on Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast. We're about to launch our new season where we got lots of great material. I know Ryan's coming back for an episode where he'll go behind the facade. Wink, wink. Yeah, that's me.
Nice. And Ryan, where can friends find and follow you?
No need to find and follow me personally, but if you like me and my theater thoughts, many of them tend to live here on the Cup. That's at COH Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube, where you might be watching this. Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast and all the podcast places where you might be listening to this. I'm also the theater editor at Next Magazine. Wrote some Fringe content there if you want to check that out. Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
Great. Let's do the final clink here, friends. And like I said, stay well, stay hydrated, keep supporting the arts, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Cup.
Cheers.
Thank you both for another great Fringe.
Huzzah.
Huzzah.